everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. I've got the full usual crew here today. With me, I've got Josh Torres.
Hi, there's a FF16 packed stream panel as we're recording, so that'll be in the background for me.
Yep, we are starting this literally scheduled at the same time as the PAX East FF16 panel. So we might have breaking news, even though by the time you listen to this, it won't be breaking news. But you know what I mean. Also joining me, we have Adam Vitale.
Hello.
We have James Colleseum.
Hey, folks.
And we have Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
I say breaking news for Final Fantasy 16, but I don't really know what that would be because we've already got the release date.
A demo?
We've already... that would be, yeah, that's a good point. That would be the one thing.
It's either a demo, a delay, or it's canceled. By canceling the game.
I hear the Windows error noise in the background. That tells you something's happening.
Uh-oh.
Well, I didn't hear it on my end, so that's.
I didn't hear it. Yeah, I think that's a skill issue, Chow.
Damn, skill issue now.
Yeah,
yeah, but go ahead.
It's only for Chow. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Yep, so we are recording this at the same time as we speak into the microphone as the PAX East FF16 panel, so we might interrupt ourselves if something exciting comes out of that. Though, of course, by the time you listen to this, Adam will likely already have a headline up on the site if something were to happen. But of course, we are just going to go on with some of the news of the week and the games we've been playing. Also, I guess I will shout out that Scott White, who is a contributor to the site, is actually at PAX East. So over the next couple of weeks, not only is he attending the Final Fantasy 16 panel, but he might be previewing some other games and be potentially writing up a few things on that. I know he mentioned he was, I believe it was Scott, was looking at that League of Legends Mage Seeker game, the one that's coming out next month, and is got the vibes of Hyper Light Drifter. So I think he was able to go hands-on on that. So PAX East is underway, and we're not quite sure everything that's going to come out of that just quite yet, but we will know pretty soon. So obviously we're wrapping up March and going into April. April gives us a little bit of a reprieve. It seems like compared to January, February, March, April is a little bit lighter, though it has filled up a bit with some intriguing titles. And then especially May, especially as we go into some of the newer release dates that were announced this week, May is starting to get pretty packed. Not that it wasn't already, but it's seeming like there's no rest for the wicked. There's a lot of games coming out in the next couple of months that are exciting to RPG fans and just us in general. As for this week, the game that is basically the big release for our site's coverage for late March is, of course, Atelier Ryza 3. This game was originally slated to release in late February, got delayed about a month. Just came out on the 24th. Do I have that right? So as the time of recording, it had just come out, or do I have that? Am I a day or so off?
No, you got it right.
Oh, sweet.
It came out just yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, at the time of recording.
10 minutes of it.
Mm-hmm. So Nathan Lee on the site is going to be covering that game, but it is apparently quite long, so they don't have the review quite ready just yet. But we have James here on the podcast with us, of course, who has also been able to look at Ryza 3 and, of course, has been a primary source of coverage for Ryza 1 and 2 when those two games had come out.
Well,
so we're gonna
Ryza 2. I did not cover Ryza 1.
Oh, who did cover Ryza 1?
I think that was Chris. They went by Liz.
So that was Chris back in 2019, and then you covered Ryza 2 and Nathan covered Ryza 3. So a lot of Atelier fans here on the site, and we're going to start off our discussion here with Ryza 3 by handing the microphone over to James to talk about their time with it.
So when I reviewed Ryza 2, my main takeaway, I'm not sure if folks remember this, was that I thought it was really genuinely impressive for how I guess if you're not familiar with the Atelier series and how Gus kind of handles things, they are a production facility when it comes to RPGs. They will release multiple games a year. Even this year, they're releasing the Atelier Maria remake in just a few months. And last year they did Sophie 2 and Blue Reflection. Was it Ty? I think.
Chow is our local Blue Reflection super fan.
Yeah, was
Ty the console sequel or was that Sun? I think it was Ty.
I think Sun is the mobile game. It was Ty. Yeah, Ty's console.
Yeah.
I actually did boot up Atelier Ryza 3 for 10 minutes, showing it to a friend, and we were like, holy shit, she runs faster than ever before. I've never seen a game where Atelier where you run so fast.
Chow, did you play
Yeah.
1 and 2?
Yes.
Oh, so I didn't actually know that.
It's like I actually play most Atelier game except for the Dawn Saga. Is it the Dusk? I think it's Dusk. Sorry.
Dusk, yeah.
I don't give them straight.
You should play the Dusk series. It's really good.
Yeah, I think that's when they kind of tone down the deadlines, because a lot of the people that play the Arlen games, there's a very strict deadline, and people didn't really like that, right?
Kind of getting off topic, I guess. But yeah, Ryza, like the main takeaway I had with Ryza 2 was that it was really impressive, like just the increase in scope and production values that game had, and like just how much of an upgrade it was versus Ryza 1 when it came out just about a year later. So my takeaway was, man, I'd love to see what they could do if they gave Ryza 3 like an extra year of development time. Lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. Even a bit longer than that too, because I think it came out in Japan in like late 2020. Ryza 2 did, so they basically got a little less than 2.5 years to get Ryza 3 out, which sounds short, and I guess it is. But as far as Gus is concerned, that's a massive development timeline for them.
I mean, they've been just outputting a lot of stuff recently. Just I didn't realize Gus had gotten so big, I suppose.
Well, they've always kind of been like that. It just used to be most of the time they would like release an Atelier game on PS3, and then they release the Plus version on Vita, and there'd kind of be like a cadence like that, so they'd be double dipping and whatnot.
That is the nice thing about Ryza, is that it's apparently just a complete package. No Ryza Plus, but it'd be interesting though to see like at what point they'll revisit it for a trilogy set. But let's speak specifically about Ryza 3. So obviously Ryza 3, I presume this is the first game in the whole series, the whole Atelier series we've had direct sequels, especially with like Sophie 2 a few years ago, but this is the third time, this is the only time, correct me if I'm wrong, where we've had the same protagonist for 3 games. Yes.
Usually the way Atelier works in general is that they'll have like trilogies, though that's kind of been muddled lately with fourth games for Arland, and obviously Sophie 2 being like a fourth game for the Mysterious trilogy. But yeah, generally the Atelier series has been self-contained trilogies with different protagonists for each games, even if the protagonists from other ones like will show up in later games in that trilogy. Ryza was the first game in a long time to buck that trend with Ryza 2. And then Ryza 3 is just straight up the only time we've had an Atelier protagonist be around for 3 games in a row. Which recently, like just in the last couple of days, we got an interview where it's like where they stated, yeah, they'd always planned on Ryza 2 happening, but it was the success of Ryza 1 that kind of gave them the opportunity to be like, okay, let's make this a full trilogy with her. Which I'm sure the sales helped with that.
Now I'm going to ask an obvious question, but I'm just going to ask it just to be absolutely clear. The Ryza 1, 2, and 3, I presume they are direct sequels, and it is strongly recommended that you play them in order.
Yes.
And not jump in on either 2 or 3 right away.
Yeah, I mean, like the Atelier series has never really been too much of a story focus. Like Ryza has a story, but it's very much lower key, as the series has always been. But even then, like Ryza does have a bit of a stronger story than previous entries, but it's still like a thing where just the Atelier series has never been about the stories. It's been about the vibes. It's been about the crafting. It's been about
Atelier is about the vibes. I just like that as a just like a motto.
Would you agree, Chow?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know. It's like if you use a comparison from like older games, it's just like kind of like a slice of life game being made. You know, you just kind of play, taking it very comfy. You know, at least that's how I see most of the games. It's not about the big overall story. They always throw some kind of threat, but that's not the big issue, really. You know.
Yeah, I'd say the Atelier game I've played that had more like the biggest focus on story was actually Aisha, the first Dust trilogy game, and even then it wasn't really so much a major story. It was just like it was very much like world building and it had like a tone. It's like the Dust series as a whole was very melancholy, but like the first one, Aisha, was definitely the strongest in that regard. But so yeah, Ryza
tee us
3.
up on Ryza 3 a bit. So I know whenever you're talking about the third game in a trilogy, I know that can be kind of difficult to try to approach because you're really only interested truly if you've already played the first two. And if you've invested that much, you kind of already know whether you're interested in a third or not, I would feel. So like approaching Ryza 3 from the perspective of having played 1 and 2, does it like what does it shake up? What does it keep the same? Why should you be excited in a third game in the series? All those questions.
So Ryza 2 improved upon Ryza 1 in a lot of ways. It really kind of polished up the Ryza formula. It made crafting a lot better. It made gathering materials a hell of a lot better, like with changes to how you could like kind of through the tool wheel just like have a quick and easy like preview of what each of your gathering tools would be able to gather from a specific like gathering point. And that's not changed. Like pretty much all of the quality of life features that Ryza 2 added have been brought over to Ryza 3. The main change with Ryza 3 is that it's almost open world. Like
yeah, I remember you touched on that in the preview a little bit, but yeah, go on.
Like it really makes it apparent from the get-go where so there's 4 regions in the game and each region is basically like a zone that's completely open. You can travel from any one point in a region to any other point in that region without any loading whatsoever. And to kind of like drive this point home, the very first region is just straight up the entire world map from Ryza 1. And Ryza 1 and 2, they had like loading zones. So like the world map for Ryza 1, it was like segmented off. There was like, if you wanted to get to the castle, you had to go through the forest, but there was like a bunch of loading zones to get to it. And then to get to the castle, to the volcano, a similar thing. But that entire like Ryza 1 world has been stitched together and expanded upon, like significantly expanded upon even, because there's the new Kark Isles region in the bottom left, which is like even like just absolutely massive because it's designed from the get-go. It's like, okay, this is going to be an open zone. So even if you like look at the map and you're like, oh, well, that new area in the bottom left doesn't look like it's that big, it's deceiving because like all the other zones were designed to be smaller and like more constrained. So you get to this big open area and it's like, it doesn't look that big. But just because of the realities of how it was designed, it's way bigger in practice. And same with the other new zones and just that one region. And then there's 3 other regions that are basically the same size as the Ryza 1, like expanded Ryza 1 world map. And it's just insane how much bigger like the entire game as a whole is.
Does the game's like story, narrative, progression make good use of the I guess the added space? Because whenever I hear a game talking about like how large the world map is, you know, there's always the general questions like, well, is it interesting to traverse? Is there plenty of stuff to do? Like how open or sandboxy is it, or is it pretty prescribed? Like you'll travel to this area first, then this area second, and so on.
It definitely has like a you definitely start off in one region, then move to another. And it's like linear which regions you're visiting. Mm-hmm. But it does a good job of making it so that there's reasons to explore everything. Whether it's just to find like quests to do or to find rare materials that you can put into like alchemizing new recipes and whatnot. Like there's plenty to do. And I feel like the world is used well. The only thing I would say, and this is, I feel like I'm almost near the end of the game, so I kind of feel like I've got a good grip on how I feel about the game as a whole. There are definitely going to be some people that prefer Ryza 3 to Ryza 2. I do think, however, there are going to be some people that prefer how Ryza 2 managed things. Because this is an open world, and it's got a lot to do, and it feels really like it's open. There's a lot to do. There's and it feels good to explore. But on the flip side, Ryza 2 was definitely more of a focused experience, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And like when you had stuff like there's nothing like the ruin dungeons from Ryza 2, which had like quite a lot of it was exploration, but it was more focused around like figuring out, okay, what happened to these civilizations that died out, like piecing things together and like kind of figuring out the story for yourself, even if Ryza 2's main story was maybe less of a focus. Ryza 3 has less of that. You do have things you can explore and find, and there's like little bits of lore you can find all around. So there's some of that there, but it's definitely not as much of a focus. So if you're in it for just like exploring and finding new like materials to alchemize stuff, then you're definitely going to prefer it. But I feel like I kind of liked the whole dungeon aspect of Ryza 2, and I think that there's something to be said for how that game handled things. But that's not a ding to Ryza 3 at all. Like in general, it's good that they've tried something different, and I kind of like that the Ryza series as a whole, each game has its own kind of specific like flavor, if that makes sense.
Well, I remember back when Ryza 2 was new, take my brain back 2 years. Now that you brought it up now, I remember you talking about this like ancient civilization, piecing together the history aspect of Ryza 2 back when that came out as a really big strength of it. So yeah, it is kind of interesting that all these games kind of have slightly shifted focuses in terms of sort of the gameplay elements that they kind of put their time and effort into. One thing that I wanted to bring up, just to see if you could speak to it a little more with some firsthand experience, is of course the full title of this game is called Alchemist of the End and the Secret Key. And with some of the early game marketing, they try to detail exactly like how this key system worked, but of course it's all like layered in, that marketing PR speak about how it's this, this really engaging thing. But can you just describe how the key system works? Is there anything that novel, or is it actually quite interesting or intricate? Is it a major component of the game or not?
It's a major component of the game, but I actually think the longer I've been playing this, that the game might have been better without it.
Okay.
I think it's like one of those things where it's like, it feels a bit bloated with how it changes up the gameplay loop, and I don't necessarily think it really makes the game all that better.
Well, boil it down for us. How does it actually work once you actually like get into it?
Okay, when you start off the game, you have access to this thing called the Hollow Key, which every time you set out from the Atelier into the open world, you have 5 charges of it that you can either use at landmarks or in the middle of battle to when an opponent's like broken and like has lost enough HP to make a key from either that landmark or that enemy. And there's certain attributes of the enemy in question or landmarks in question that will determine what type of key that can be made to a certain extent. Later on, you get access to being able to craft pristine keys, which are a limited resource that you have to explicitly craft, that when used as a charge, you can make stronger keys. And the way keys work is they can have a variety of different effects. They can have effects that improve your buff when you use them in the middle of battle. They have effects that if you equip them as like an accessory, they will just boost your attributes or give you specific other like changes to your character. There's adventure effects, which can make it so it's like, okay, maybe rare monsters have a higher chance of spawning, or stronger monsters have a higher chance of spawning, or you can use them to unlock like caches or like break barriers to like give you access to other parts of the map, stuff like that. It's all very intricate. The main problem is that while there are aspects of keys that you can kind of account for when trying to craft them, I feel like there's already so much you have to consider when you're alchemizing stuff, when you're trying to find materials to craft stuff, that I feel like the keys are maybe one step a little bit too far, especially when you have access to, it's like you can use them in like synthesis and they'll have different attributes. Like I'm even on the screen right now, and like if I use a secret key for crafting pristine keys, you'll see that there's like different recipe levels that if you use different keys, they'll give you different effects. So if I use a key that's common or uncommon, well, this one's just based off of how common the key is. If I use a common one, it just increases the quality a little bit. If I use an uncommon one, it gives me the effects of level 1, but also adds like additional numbers of pristine keys when I'm finished with the synthesis. If if I use a rare one, and it lets me put more materials into the synthesis at first. So there's stuff like that for every craft in the game that has specific attributes depending on the key you use. And it's not just based off rarity. Sometimes it's based off of, okay, if you use a key on an ore type enemy, it'll give you an ore type key. Or if you use something against like a bird type enemy, it'll give you like a feather type key and stuff like that.
I will be honest, like I'm trying to be like, okay, my IQ is high enough to understand this, but when you describe the key, the fact that they seem so versatile, like you can equip them, you can use them in synthesis. It seems like the primary use. You can actually use them as keys. It just seems like they kind of are MacGuffins that have a lot of different disparate uses. And it's almost hard for me to get like a latch on it, like exactly because they don't have just a clear, very identifiable, this is how they're used.
I think the main problem is that the only way to kind of have like a good grasp on what sort of key you're going to make is by like using them against enemies, which means that one of the changes they made in Ryza 3 is that it's much, much quicker to gather stuff in general. Like you're just running around. If you see something, you can just kind of like run up to it, press the A button. Without skipping a beat. It's like in Monster Hunter World. Like in previous Monster Hunter games, you would have to sit still and just kind of gather for a bit. But in Monster Hunter World, it's just like you're kind of just walking by, gathering everything you see. It's kind of that sort of shift in a direction. But the keys are the one sort of material or like resource that deliberately requires quite a bit of at least more investment in order to get, and it just can be a bit I wouldn't say frustrating, but it definitely does have an impact on the flow of the game if you're trying to do something where it's like, okay, I need this specific key, how do I get it? Okay, I need to fight this specific type of enemy, especially if it's like if I want to get a rare key, I'm going to have to make pristine keys first, which means I need to have the right materials for it, which that isn't as much of a deal because it's relatively common materials to make those, but still, like, you have to make them first. You have to go through the process of synthesizing them. Then you have to find the enemy that you want to use against them, get into a battle, break them, get their HP low enough so that you can use the key. Ideally, get them low enough so that the key doesn't have a chance of failing because there's like a certain percentage chance based off of how much health they have.
Okay.
And it's just a lot to consider, which is not a bad thing, but it definitely has an impact on the flow of it all, which is kind of striking when otherwise the game has made the developers have made a very big effort to kind of clamp down on how much work it takes to go from like point A to point B, if that makes sense.
It sounds like the way you're describing it, that between, especially with some of the upgrades to Ryza 2 that they've carried over into Ryza 3, a lot of the game is like easy breezy. A lot of the game is, very like comfort food. But then with this key element, it just seems like, all right, time to put on your micromanage hat at least a little bit in order to get the most out of this, which isn't inherently bad. Micromanaging isn't a bad thing. It just feels it just feels a bit different. It seems like is the way you're describing it.
Yeah, definitely. Just it's very striking compared to how the rest of the game works. Is kind of what I'm trying to say, I guess.
All right.
But again, it's not a bad thing. Like some people definitely prefer having that like extra bit of micromanagement. It's just like it feels at odds with the rest of the experience in a way where it's like, and considering how big of a focus the keys are, it's just kind of striking where it's like it feels like you're pumping the brakes whenever you need to get a specific type of key. Whereas everything else, it's like it's very easy to just like, even with how big the world is, with how many landmarks there are and how quick the loading times are, at least on PC. I don't know about I assume PS5 will be similar. I don't know about Switch. With how everything is like that, it's just like the keys are the one thing that you'd want to get that just takes much, much more time in order to get prepared for what you want to do. So it's like compared to everything else, it stands out is what I'm saying.
For me, whenever I have to micromanage something in a game, painting with a broad brush, usually the act upon realizing that a little bit of micromanagement's needed, or you have to like really look at your gear or items or attributes, and I'm speaking very generically here, I don't enjoy like the prep phase of that, but once you're actually like executing it, once you realize I need to do this, and you set up your whatever you need to set up in order to execute that, and then once you're doing it, I usually find a little bit of enjoyment out of it. But I can see at a high level, hypothetically, how it might feel at odds when you're kind of conditioned from the first two games to not have to expect that from this series.
Well, the thing is that micromanaging is absolutely a part of Atelier's DNA, and I'm not saying the micromanaging itself is a problem. I think the best way to explain it is it feels like when you're micromanaging like a synthesis, or you're micromanaging a piece of equipment or something like that, there's a very immediate payoff where you're having to micromanage just to make one key, and you don't necessarily know if what you're going to get from it is going to be worth it. Because and that's kind of the whole thing. Like if I'm crafting a piece of armor and I go through the process of reducing a bunch of my materials to gems so I can pour it into item rebuilding to max out a piece of equipment to make it as strong as I can, it's very immediately obvious what the end result of that is. It's very easy to see exactly what's going to happen to that equipment when I'm done with that busy work. But with the keys, it's hard to, and there's a certain bit of randomness with, like, say, the caches. Like, you can find like synthesis recipes for like gear from those caches, but it's hard to tell exactly how that works, exactly where they can be found and whatnot. But most of the time you open a cache and it's just a bunch of random materials that you probably could have found better materials just running around whacking trees or smashing rocks on your own. And that's why it feels like it's kind of at odds, because it's like the best thing it feels like keys can do for you is if you can get one with a buff that if you like equip it as like an accessory or something to a character, it gives them like a massive buff to their stats. It feels like that's the best thing to do with it. And then like in combat, you can kind of use a key to like spam skills, but I feel like the combat in Ryza 3 also doesn't have as much of a defined gameplay loop versus Ryza 2. Like Ryza 2, I felt like once you unlocked everything, it had a very clear gameplay loop how you wanted to do things. Whereas this one, with the added complexity of the keys and some of the rebalancing to how things like skills work, like ironically enough, it feels like there's way like Ryza 1, definitely there was like every Atelier game, you could get really powerful with items and you could use them and become powerful, and like battles, they could be a very, very important tool. But Ryza 1 had an issue where like there was a core charge system, and to use items, you needed to use core charges, and those didn't really regenerate that quickly. You had to go to specific spots in the world map to regenerate them after battle. So it felt like you were spending all this time to make like one item, whereas in previous like Atelier games, you're spending time to make tons of items, and there was a reason to use them in battle, like actively. But Ryza 2 fixed that by making it so that as you're using skills, you'll get like core charge points. So it's not that you're beholden to a set amount of core charges and you have to go somewhere on the overworld to recharge them. It was just based off of how you were doing in battle. But if anything, it feels like Ryza 3 goes even harsher in that direction, because now the way that skills have been rebalanced and how your like actual stats have been rebalanced, it feels like the best way to deal with battles is just to spam the same skills, like not skills, same items over and over and over again, even on the hardest difficulties. And I'm not
Are you playing on hard?
Yeah, I'm playing on very hard.
One thing I was curious about, just having played the other two games to completion and saying you're approaching near the end of this game, is it about the same length, or because of the way the world map is designed, is it like taking you more time? But I was going to say, that was my guess. Like if I was going to guess, I'm going to guess it was going to take you a little bit longer on 3 compared to 1 or 2.
Yeah, Ryza 2 is already a longer game than Ryza 1, and this one is absolutely, especially for trying to do everything, is going to be even longer. But yeah, I've been enjoying it. But it's like one of the things I've really liked about Ryza 2 is it felt like the combat had a really good flow to it, and it felt like they'd really kind of perfected the Ryza combat system. And I can't say that I feel like what the changes they've made to Ryza 3 actually improve upon it. If anything, it just feels like a messier experience, which is kind of a shame.
Well, what would you say Ryza 3 does potentially better than Ryza 2? Just curious. Just to try to end this on a high note.
Well, like I said, like the world design is really, really good. It's just and like I'm not saying that just because I preferred like the dungeon stuff that others would feel the same way. The immediate story is definitely better. There's more of a focus, though. The localization does have some issues, which I mean, I feel like the Atelier series has always kind of had that problem where sometimes the localization is either really rough, other times they change a character's last name to make an STD joke. But it's
I don't know if I want to pry at that or not.
It was a bad era for these in terms of like local like botched localizations. Quite frankly, it was basically there was an NPC in an Atelier game that had
SD or Heart, and they changed her last name to D, so it would be STD.
Yeah, for a joke like that, and
there's no reason. That's a bit silly. Really. Yeah, it's a bit silly.
Yeah. I know I sound like negative about the game. I want to be clear. I'm really enjoying the game. I'd say like I know I'm not reviewing it, but if I were to review it, I'd probably still give it a 9. It's just like
I don't think you're being negative about it. I think you're just like you're being very fair about it. It's like you played 1, 2, and 3, and then you're just like saying, hey, these are the things that 3 does well, and some of the things that 3 doesn't do well compared to its predecessor. I don't think that's necessarily negative about it. It's just like you're being fair to it.
Well, that's why, games aren't just linear. You don't measure them on a ruler. I think you've made it pretty clear how you talked about how it's world design and the openness of it and the scale of it is really good. How the story you've said that even though it seems like it's less of a focus, you're really enjoying it. And then you talked about how the combat is something you think might have been done better in 2. And I think that's more of an interesting opinion rather than saying 2 is wholesale better than 3 or 3 is wholesale better than 2, because that's not how things go most of the time. Usually you'll have bits of each that you'll like more or like less. That's just more genuine, I feel.
So a little bit of that, like I know you're getting to the end of the story, and of course you want to not spoil anything for people, but like with the way things are going right now compared to like the stories of 1, 2, and 3, and the way that where you think the story is gonna go, like do you think like the journey for Ryza has been like well worth it? Or like how the events went in this final piece of the trilogy.
One thing I do want to say that I kind of tended off on a high note. I think one of the strongest things about Ryza as a trilogy is actually the fact that not only are you seeing Ryza grow up, but you're seeing her friends and like everyone else from like Ryza 1 and 2, just seeing how they've changed and like have grown into their own adults. Like they're like, you genuinely see the cast of Ryza 1 grow up into well-adjusted adults, regardless of what issues they might or might not have had in like their childhood. Like Lent went from I guess spoilers for Ryza 1, a kid who was straight up abused by his alcoholic dad to somebody that's outright standing up for himself and his mom as his own like well-adjusted adult, like doing his own things, separated from like all the stuff that he felt was ingrained into him from his dad, like which was a struggle he had in Ryza 2. And now in like Ryza 3, he's like very confident. He's not gotten over. That's not a right way of putting it. He's adjusted from his trauma and he's in a good space. And then you have someone like Tower. It's like in the first game, he's very much like a bookworm. He looks like a little nerd. Like he doesn't have any sort, like he seems awkward. He was literally the bullied kid. Then like Ryza 2, you see him like grow into his own, become more confident, where it's like, okay, he's reading about all this ancient history and he's like, you know what? I want to explore ancient history after like seeing like all the adventure he went through in the first game. He just goes, well, I feel confident. I'm going to start exploring these ruins, which leads into Ryza 2 and it is expanded upon even in like Ryza 3. And Ryza herself, she becomes an alchemist in 1 because she's like, she's a country girl. She just wants to she wants something interesting. She wants to like explore the world, explore what's outside the realm of like her island life that she's like known her entire like childhood. It's just like one of those things where it's like you don't really see that sort of growth across games, even in like RPGs or really any games really. So just having a trilogy where it feels like these characters, not just Ryza, but her friends too, just you can see the through line of how they've actually developed, even if the stories themselves aren't that like super deep. It really feels earned and fulfilling because it's like you can see the journey they made there, and even if it hasn't been like an incredibly eventful like journey for them, you can just see how like it's impacted them like genuinely and from a realistic perspective and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I like Chow was saying earlier, like Atelier games and the multi-part like Atelier games, they feel like a slice of life show, and with slice of life shows, you're not really there to see like a definitive like storyline end, but things will keep on going at a certain course by the end of those slice of life runs, and you're more there just peeking into like how these like learning about these characters, learning where they come from, and how they grow into their own person. And that's really kind of the strength of slice of life shows, is like you're witnessing a person's life like at a moment in time that like it's changing the most.
Yeah, I think the best way to kind of put it is that Ryza 1 and 2, you kind of saw Ryza and her friends grow up, and then in Ryza 3, they're the not stereotypical, but they're like the JRPG party, but you've seen how they've gotten there. They used to be normal people. They've gone through a lot and enough to where it's like you see where they are now, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It's nice. It's
cool.
that you have like, because that's something that is afforded them through the fact that they've had a whole trilogy to build up these characters, and not just the length of time, because you could just make like I would say that having 3 different stories in the trilogy offers you the ability to do things that one longer story doesn't, where they all have like the different climaxes and the different all the different episodes that they've been able to put together, so that when you approach Ryza 3 and you see these characters, you've already got that pre-baked understanding about who exactly they are, because you've experienced it firsthand.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess we should say also, like, before we get off this this Rise of block, like they did announce like that they're also giving an anime adaptation to the first Ryza game ever, Darkness in the Secret Hideout, and that's airing this summer, so it's just right around the corner as well, and that's really interesting. Like I think this is not the first time they've put an anime adaptation for an
Didn't they
Atelier.
do an Eska and Logi one?
I think
Yes, they
it's
did.
Eskimogi.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did.
I don't know if they did anything beyond that though. That's the last one I thought I remember.
Yeah, Eska and Logi is interesting because it's like the one Atelier game where it's a duo of alchemists, and very explicitly it's like a girl and a guy, which is interesting because it's like there's very much a chemistry between them.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see, like, do you think the structure and the story of the first Ryza game does it lend itself well to an anime adaptation?
Uh yes, but I think a lot of people might go into it with the wrong idea
Mm-hmm.
because it's very much less of a focus versus yeah.
It's
It,
more
it,
of it's a smaller scope story. It's more of a chill sort of like it's like kind of like the beginning roots of something greater. So it's not like something that's going to be like super eventful, like, or action packed. You think?
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's just definitely one of those things where hopefully people go into it understanding it's very much going to be a lower key story.
Mm-hmm. And do you think like, because I know Esko and Logi was like a one off for anime adaptations for the Atelier series. Do you think they're gonna go like adapt 2 and 3?
I think
To
there's a good chance that it'll happen because the games have been very successful. 2 and especially 3 would absolutely work well as like an anime story. I feel like, and I think if I was Koei Tecmo and Gust, and I was like, okay, we're going to be jumping to the next Atelier like trilogy. Well, Rise has done really, really well. You maybe don't want to let go of her quite yet.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah. Do you think this will be like a nice buffer, like because I know they're obviously doing the Marie remake later this year, but after that, there's nothing really on the map for Atelier beyond that. Do you think they're going to use the Rise anime as sort of like that buffer time to get like to get Gust, give them more development time to see what's next for Atelier?
I don't know if that'll necessarily be it. I would like that to be the case, because I feel like we were talking, Jesse, every week about how, like, last week they announced that Ryza 1 and 2 combined had sold 1.6 million copies, which means that in like the next month or two, we're probably going to find out with like whatever buff from Ryza 3's launch does. Probably Ryza 1 is going to cross 1 million copies sold, which is insane for the Atelier series.
Yeah, that's big.
So it's like,
Well,
you're
we
already
also
seeing it
we
with
also talked a little bit about the. Sorry to talk over you. We also talked a little bit about how Atelier 2, Ryza 2, maintained a lot of the momentum of Ryza 1. So I'm eager to see if Ryza 3 does the same thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's definitely a case where how will that momentum carry forward for the next trilogy, and how will it like impact how Gus develops their games? Because it's like Ryza 3 is an important game for Gus for a number of reasons, but the main one for me is that it's very clearly got a larger budget. It had a larger development cycle, and if Koei Tecmo feels like they could pivot them to making games that maybe have that like even more of a budget, even more of a like a development timeline, what will the next Atelier series will look like? Will it be like more of a bigger budget RPG series moving forward? Or are they maybe looking at like how, what, like, say Persona is like grown up, like blown up worldwide, and maybe they're thinking, hey, can we do this? I don't know. I don't know if they can like blow up to nearly that like regard, but you got to wonder if there's conversations within Koei Tecmo and Gus being like, so what do we do next? And I think that's
Yeah,
really
the next
fascinating.
Atelier trilogy will have, some. It'll be a group that likes to rob, special things within inside people. You know how it goes. They call themselves the Phantom something. But really, I think it's going to be a really difficult challenge for them, and I think that's just inherent to the Atelier series as a whole. Of like, because they, within each arc, it's always a new protagonist when it's the start of a new arc. So, like, all the love and energy and passion people have had for Ryza and her friends, that's not necessarily going to be applicable to whatever the next Atelier arc
Yeah.
is going to be. And I think the long-standing thing is that Atelier fans will always keep coming back because of the unique Atelier gameplay loop of that blend of like exploring the world with the battle system and how much it interacts with the crafting system, and
I
you feel like an alchemist
I
in
think I
those
get
types of
what you're
games.
saying there, where it's like, I definitely don't know how much of the player base for Ryza it would consider themselves Atelier fans or
Mhm.
specifically Ryza fans.
Right.
And we're gonna have to see how that goes. Because
Uh,
even now you see some people like upset about even the idea that there might be less of a focus on fan service in whatever comes next, when Atelier's frankly never been about fan service.
Yeah,
Like, even
it never
Ryza,
knows.
it's just mostly been Ryza's character design,
I
Lila's
think
character
that's
design,
weird
and
lip service. To be honest, even if they never said that, like it would still. I think for people who've played many Atelier games, I don't think they would be like, ah, yes, this has less fan service than like the ones before. I don't think they'd like even really notice because I don't really like you said like with all the
it's
Atelier
not
games
a part of the
I've played.
series identity. Is
Yeah,
pretty
like
much
even the
it.
few ones I've played, it's like I don't really see this as a fan service game. Like I'll grant you that there have been like some very like weird scenes like in like some earlier
Like in
games.
the
Like
Arlen games.
yeah, like
But it's like, you look at pretty much all the Dust trilogy, there's nothing there.
yeah,
And it's like, I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see how many of the people that Ryza brought into the series, if they're actually interested in the series itself. Or
right.
yeah,
We'll see. We'll see. That
Well,
I think it's
obviously we have the Atelier Marie remake in the summer, but that's kind of it's going to be hard to extrapolate from that one because it's got a very different art style. It's a remake of
the
a much
first
older
game.
game, et
Yeah,
cetera, et cetera.
yeah. I don't think the Marie remake is necessarily a signifier for what the
Yeah,
future of
it's
that
not a good
series
barometer.
holds. I think it's more of it's a nice celebration title for where the series started and where it is now. I think that's really awesome of them to do that. But
Hmm.
it's not necessarily like, hey, this is where Atelier So we'll see.
Well, thank you, James, for going very in depth about your time with Atelier Ryza 3 so far and going into the context of how you feel about it compared to Ryza's 1 and 2. Like I said at the outset, Nathan, contributor to the site, will be writing up the review for that. Doesn't have it ready quite yet, but this way at least you'll get one staff member's opinion, and maybe we'll get Chow to play through it and offer his opinion down the road, or potentially in the Game of the Year discussion, things like that. And we will go on from there once Atelier Marie Remake comes out. Say that 5 times fast. Now, the other major game, when we were talking about and going through the list of games to talk about this week, that we were looking at what we should put on the itinerary for this podcast, we decided to go with a very big release for the week. But it's not an RPG, but we figured, to heck with it, we're going to talk about it anyway. And that is the Resident Evil 4 remake or remaster.
Hold on, Brian. It has side quests.
So it has
side quests. It's RPG.
Oh, okay. Is that the rubric now? Side quests? That's sufficient.
It's good enough.
Good enough.
Right, so I've seen this game being shared across Twitter, Reddit, all over the place, and it seems like everyone is really, really high on it. Maybe not everyone, but most people, many people. And I saw Josh was in one of our Discord channels earlier streaming it, I saw, and has been playing a little bit of the Resident Evil 4 re-release. So we figured, hey, why not? We'll give ourselves a chance to talk about it here. So Resident Evil 4, totally an RPG. Second game we're talking about on our podcast.
You know me. I whenever I think about like, oh, I'm gonna go to on a podcast that's for an RPG site, I do not want to talk about RPGs. Let's definitely not talk about RPGs. No, it's just more like I haven't really been playing much RPGs lately. I mean, I started a replay of Jedi Fallen Order, which is not really an RPG, but you know, it's kind of on the borderline. It has skill points and a skill tree there. You know. But
I think we're gonna be covering Jedi Survivor.
We might. Yeah. I know there are some things behind the scenes going on the site that, you know, it might be pivoting towards that. But we'll see. Yeah, and other than that, I haven't really been doing much with RPGs lately. So yeah, I started the Resident Evil 4 remake. You know, just like a day ago or so, because the keys came late from Green Man Gaming, and that was a whole kerfuffle there. But whatever. You know, I'm only very early on. You know, like in chapter 3 or chapter 4.
I'm only in chapter 2. So.
Yeah, we're still.
It should be chapter 2 or chapter 3. I don't know. I'm about to get the boat.
You're I think you're near. I think you're around where I'm at. I think I have to make my way to the lake right now.
People play the original 4 so much. You could just say that one word and people know kind of like exactly kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I played the original GameCube version of Resident Evil 4, and I loved it. You know, I wouldn't say I'm like the biggest Resident Evil fan. Like I played 1, 2, and 3 on PS1. You know, but I didn't like super get into that. Like maybe did like I did.
I was big into it, but I was not very good at them. My other friend was very good at it. Yeah. So how we usually do it is like, well, the thing is, my brother and cousin usually buy a Resident Evil game, and we were only like 10 years old, and we were playing as kids. So it's like, yeah, we're breaking the ESRB law, but whatever. It is.
Well, just a couple months ago, we were talking about you had played Sweet Home, which was a lot of the inspirations, apparently.
Yes, because there's a lot of like puzzle elements to Resident Evil game. Because I see Resident Evil more of a puzzle game than a horror game. You're trying to like solve these clues to open the doors to get to your next destination. You know.
Yeah. Especially Resident Evil 1. You know, like that was obviously a horror game, but also very much as much of a puzzle game as it is a horror game, which is like a nice like flavor of things. So I really like the way Resident Evil 1 and its remake, you know, kind of struck that gameplay balance and flow. And of course, Resident Evil 2, an all-time great game, whether it's like the remake or the classic one. And that's just that went crazy with like when you think about like the jump from the first Resident Evil 1 into Resident Evil 2.
Like, big improvement.
Yeah, and then they somehow like struck gold Resident Evil 2 remake. Like I remember like that video of them saying like when the project was like greenlit. Yeah, we do it, and they did it. They fucking did it.
In that room at San Diego Comic-Con when they said that.
And it was wild. And then we're like, okay, well, good fucking luck, like in that time, the only thing we really knew about Resident Evil remakes was Resident Evil 1 remake, and that was like fantastic. But Resident Evil 2 was a very different game, and then that came out, and that
Not
was
to
like,
mention,
you're
like
crazy. You guys are
when,
crazy.
not to mention when they announced that, like Capcom was in a very different state.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like people like were kind of pessimistic, and I
Mhm.
wouldn't say they were wrong for feeling that way.
Yeah.
Like
I think
nowadays, it's very very different. Like
I was trying to remember. Is that the time when they did like the Tekken versus Street Fighter
it was Street
thing?
Fighter versus Tekken. And I very much remember I went to the Tekken panel. It was either that or the Comic Con before or after that. And in the Tekken panel, Ono just kind of like bombed it to try and say, "Hey, people, play the Street Fighter 5 demo and buy my game." And I was like, "Really, dude? Classy."
Oh man.
Yeah, they were in a pretty sad state back in that time. They were almost bankrupt, weren't they? Until like a bunch of investors like
I mean,
put their money
they
in.
were pretty much like things were looking dicey pre Monster Hunter World, and Monster Hunter World kind of saved the company.
It was wild seeing like the stream right after Monster Hunter World came out, and it was immediately obvious that it was a success. Like that was the happiest I've seen any of those developers look. You could tell they were like, "Oh, thank God, we're good."
hmm Yeah. So, I was definitely one of those people that like when they announced, hey, when the leaks came out and like and sort of like thing that like, hey, they're planning to do a remake for Resident Evil 4, and I was like, does Resident Evil 4 really need a remake? Like to me in my mind, I was like, that still seems like a modern game. You can still, play it on PC and but it's not really available on modern platforms, sure. But I'm like, but what would you remake about it? How's
now,
that?
and now it
And
seems like the consensus is, at least so far, where it's like it is an excellent game called Resident Evil 4. It does not replace the original game, and that's the best case scenario because it's like it stands on its own merits. It's a great game, it's a great remake, but there's still
yeah,
plenty of reason to want to play the original. It's like
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. I think that's the only thing they could have like done better with it. Like I always there's always unfair, right? Because I always think about the Odin Sphere remake, the Leifthrosphere, and how
Where
they
it's
bundled
like
the
you can
original.
be,
Yeah, you can play the original Odin Sphere game in it as well. And that's what I always think about remakes. It's like if you're gonna remake a game, you should have the original game with it because that game kind of shaped my beliefs on that. But it's fine. You can get the original Resident Evil 4 for very cheap, and it goes on sale these days. Fair.
There's also the HD was it remaster pack? Someone did like an HD mod. Spent
yeah,
like
the
800.
RE4 HD mod. That person now works for Atari.
Yeah. Well, what's that studio? Is it Night Dive Studio?
Which just got bought by Atari.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny how things work out.
We
Maybe
yeah
they're playing close
we didn't cover that on the site, but I remember Adam had posted it, and it's like, what is Atari anymore? Like I don't like it's changed. That name and logo has changed hands enough times over the last 10 years that I'm like,
I
can't
know
follow
that
it.
I know the Atari 50 release they did was well received, but
Yeah.
I think that they do some neat stuff. I don't know, man. I think the shit they pulled with TXK and then like what they did with Tempest 4000, it's like it's still a great game, but it's like one of the best things about that game was the soundtrack. Tempest 4000 doesn't have it. So,
Yeah, yeah, the Atari 50 thing that recently came out last year, like it's more on the hey, it's Digital Eclipse. Digital Eclipse does fantastic work when it comes to like, you know, like putting retro collections out in like in a way that like respects them and preserves them in a way that's just like excellent. And that's just like the more of a Digital Eclipse thing than Atari in my mind. But yeah, I mean, Atari is a very weird company these days. That's just the best way I can really describe them. It's like obviously they're trying to reclaim their former glory, and that's just it's a very tough landscape out there these days, and you can't be fucking doing stupid shit to try and reclaim that. You have to
it's
have to go through the ringer to do that.
it's just I'm surprised they even had the money to buy a studio, considering like the VCS was cool, but I don't think that did well.
No, I don't think it did well at
I heard
all.
nothing but negative things about that system. I
Yeah.
heard the hardware inside's good, it's decent, but all the fiasco if it is coming or not. And
Well, it eventually came out, and the people that did use it said that it was like it delivered what they said it would, and it was like a neat like set top box. So it's like it was a path to get there, but considering how many other like projects like that have just fallen into the ether and never released, I'll give them credit for actually following through and making something that even closely resembles what they said it was going to be.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, Resident Evil 4, the remake. Damn, I don't even know where to start. Like, there's so many things that they changed in this game that like right away you can just like kind of. What do you think, Chow? I don't know where to start. You tell me where.
I just find it hilarious on the beginning, the Hunter's Lodge.
Uh-huh.
That became a field to learn how to play the game instead of like the original where you just fucking bust out of the place.
Oh yeah.
It's like totally a different experience there. I think this game, it's definitely not going to be the same thing, obviously, right? But it's like a mixture of the RE2 remake and the original RE4, and you get those two blends, so it has a more horror element to it, which the kind of like the original 4 kind of lacked. I would say there's not much horror; it's more action based, in my opinion, right?
Yeah. I mean, both Resident Evil 4 and the remake are still like Leon's a fucking action hero, movie action hero, pretty much. But the way this starts, the way this starts off, and the way the color palette is a lot more darker, and like it's trying to position itself as like, yes, there is still like horror elements, and they want to like kind of bring some more of those classic horror elements.
I was
Right
gonna
away.
say, does he feel like a more an asshole this one too?
Leon is an asshole, but both. I don't like.
I know, but
if anything,
it feels more snobbish in this one.
I get in a way, yeah.
The way they like, even just playing the demo, the way that he's like portrayed at the beginning of the game is very much. I definitely have PTSD from Resident Evil 2. I'm sick of this shit. I can't believe I have to do this again.
Because you remember, like Leon is working under the Resident, not necessarily by choice. He's kind of
first day on the job in Raccoon City, goes through the apocalypse.
Yeah, like the U.S. government is basically blackmailing him to working for them.
Yeah, they actually expanded that backstory. Instead of the original, was like, yeah, Umbrella went under for some stupid reason, and I am working for the government somehow.
Yeah,
that's kind of like the original. Now it kind of gives you a little bit more lore that is. He survived the apocalypse, and now I had to do this shit again? Are you kidding me? That's kind of like the new backstory instead, right?
Yeah. So, but in this one, it just feels so. It feels really good once you start tweaking with the you get all your controls down, because there's a lot of like options for the way you want to like tweak your play on gamepad or keyboard and mouse. But once you like start, you get like the right settings for you.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to get used to controls because there's all different movement with the knife now. The knife has such an improvement in this one compared to the original.
Yeah, I mean the knife is so it's versatile, but it's not too versatile. It's not because it has a durability meter.
Yeah.
And this
have you killed the chainsaw guy using the knife? It's so easy with the knife killing the chainsaw guy. You would be
no, I did not kill a chainsaw dude with a knife yet.
Okay, because what I did was that I throw a flash grenade, and when they throw flash, they start to be staggered. I just run behind them, just do the backstab, and just do that twice, and they actually like die. It works better than shooting them with shotgun shells like 10 times.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet. I've oddly just like
pro.
Yeah, I haven't because whenever I do like the initial village section, I just kind of like run around and get shit, waiting it out because I know like there's gonna be a lot of wasted bullets. Like the only time I ever use bullets during that section is like if I need like something to get out of the way, so I shoot one in the head, run up to melee to get a clearing, continue to run, and run the timer out usually. Though I did experiment for the first few times with it just to see like some of the animations of like death animations, because some of those are fucking crazy, dude.
Even the original's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I think someone compiled a video like 256 ways of getting killed in Resident Evil 4, just watching Leon dying from all kinds of messed up situations. Yeah, the deaths are brutal. What is it? I was gonna say like this one actually like there's like different kind of damage you take. Unlike the original where everything kind of like this consistent damage, this one's more like if you get like freaking impaled in the face, it's like, oh, there goes half your life bar. But if you just got like a little tiny little touch of a tackle, it's like it won't like touch much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like even, but and you also have like unique death animations based on like what your last hit was. So like when I got punched in the face for a last hit, like that was a unique death animation, I think, compared to what I've seen before. And I'm like, that's a really interesting, nice touch. That's funny. But it's just like it at its core. It's like the good parts of Resident Evil 4, but like made like somehow even better. Like obviously, you have your modern touches of like, hey, you can now look down the sights and like move around. You couldn't do that in the original Resident Evil 4. You had to like be firmly planted when you're aiming down sights, or not aiming down sights, like just aiming in general. Because that was kind of the primitive form of like what you saw in video games for the next decade in terms of like over the shoulder third person view. Like Resident Evil 4 kind of invented that whole scheme and put the puzzle pieces together to make it something really, really special. And then every video game in existence was like, we should fucking do that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there was a lot of RE4 clones during that time.
Yeah, and for many, many years and multiple generations to come, and you still see it now. This one doesn't really reinvent the wheel, but it just it makes it feel better in a modern context. You still have like the Tetris briefcase inventory management. That still feels good to do. They have an auto sort, which is really funny in this one.
Free. That's why I do all the time.
It's so shitty though. I hate it.
I don't want to play Tetris. I had enough trauma doing that in Diablo games. Okay, it's like, oh, my inventory is filled with 99% charms and nothing for anything else.
The auto sort is so bad. It makes everything look awful and bad, and it's like kind of you're that person that just like throws things in the briefcase. It's like it fits. Whatever.
No creativity.
Me, I just okay.
You'd think for someone that spends so much of their life making deeply intricate guides that you'd care about your inventory in a game like Resident Evil.
Okay, when I play my own file, I am so half-assed. I only keep one save file playing Trails, and I was like, I miss all that shit.
What?
I can't go back. It's like that's why I never did
genuinely. This is genuinely like shocking to me because it's like, what?
That is so funny.
That's why a Zero Guide never exists. I miss a backdoor alley book, and I was like, fuck this. I'm done.
We learned a lot about Chow today.
I followed Chow's guide for Cold Steel 3 twice, because I played through the game twice to get all the black records shit or whatever, and I didn't get the chest achievement both times.
And now you know why.
I'm pretty sure that's actually on me. I'm always terrible about actually.
I have a terrible habit of keeping one save file because as a kid growing up, when you play in Super Nintendo cartridges, you only have 3 save files. That first slot belongs to your older brother, probably. The second slot belongs to you. And the third slot belongs to someone else.
Okay, Brian, how many save slots did you use for Cold Steel 3?
Several. And I don't know if it's specifically for that game, but I'm in the habit of. I don't do it as bad as Adam.
200 slots, I think.
Well, I was actually gonna say, like, I'm pretty sure Adam uses a new slot every time. I think I usually like do 10 and I rotate through.
The only time I did like completely different saves for every time I saved was when I played through Kuro. Like I straight up have like saves from every spot in that game. So if somebody wanted to see a specific portion of that game, I could just load it up right now.
Now, how many save slots do you have in Cold Steel 3? How many save slots did you use?
Me?
Yeah.
I think it was just like 2. One for
wow.
There's an extra one because that's a clear save file.
Only because one's the clear save file. Chow lives on the edge.
I love it actually. I never thought the Chow was that kind of person, but the way he writes guides, he does it very well. But he's
well, I just recently finished Octopath, and on that one, or 2, and on that one, I actually kept myself to like 4 save files.
Did you use my side quest guide?
I did.
It was very big,
and I used your Hikari challenge guide too.
It's like there's some really good skills in there.
But
Once
Yeah.
I'm done with Ryza 3, I'm heading right back to Octopath 2. That game was so good. I need to finish it.
I'll get around to it one day. That's
That
where
is
I'm at.
Octopath 2. I can already tell is going to be in the top
Could-
5 this year.
It's definitely a contender for sure.
We'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, things can happen. We still got plenty of time.
That's right.
Yeah, it is March.
Yeah. But
After
yeah,
all, Fuga 2 comes out in May.
but like yeah, me and Chow are still very early on in Resident Evil 4 remake. We're having fun. What was your main complaint, Chow?
Bear traps, there's everywhere. I step in like 10 bear traps while the chainsaw guy was chasing me.
I like that they upped the amount of bear traps in the game for no fucking reason. It's just
Who
like,
puts this many bear traps? There's a freaking bear trap right in your front door. You like walk in, bear trap. Come on.
yeah. There's like an early thing, like when you first meet Luis or Luis, and you get chained up, and the scene with that is really over the top in this remake, which is really funny. But when you're getting your equipment back, it's a very brief section through an abandoned factory, and like you go up to this locked door. You have to go around, but like right in front of that locked door is like just a bear trap, and like for whatever reason, I positioned my camera in a way that I didn't see it until I like was backing away from the door. I didn't know that bear was there until like I was backing away from the door, and my friend was just like laughing at me because I was like streaming it on another Discord. He's like, "You didn't see that?" I'm like, "Dude, I swear to God, that bear trap spawned right there and right then and there. There's no way it
I
was there."
swear to God, they're invisible. I even have glasses now. I can't freaking see them.
Did you rescue the dog?
No, I didn't know where it was.
Did you already get go past the village elder manor the village elders manor section?
I think so. I think I'm
If you're
sure. Yeah, I know that you rescued the dog. He comes and saves you in the original game.
yeah, but it's different where you do it in this remake. Like in the original, was like
Yeah, because I was like
very-
going there. I was like, "Where's the dog? It's not here." It's oh shit.
yeah, it's at a different spot. Like I was like I checked the original spot, and I was like, where the fuck is the dog? And then I heard something shortly after that section. I'm like, oh, it's here now. Okay.
People love doing this with with all kinds of remakes. Locations that you're so familiar with, they gotta switch it up so it keeps it a surprise. You know, if you know where it is,
Yeah.
the surprise is ruined. Right? You know?
I'm messing around with the bolt. That like is the bolt is in the bolt. What is it, cutter or throw or whatever? It's like a new weapon. And it's like it's a way for you to like kind of save up on ammo, because what the bolt does is you can you
can
kind of
kill them and then take your ammo back.
yeah, pretty much, as long as like you can like retrieve the bolts from their body. And you can craft more bolts with like knives that you get. It's kind of like a weird thing because like it's like kind of like a shitty weapon for like groups. You definitely want to use it just like on one-off enemies, but that it might go a long way. I don't know if I necessarily like it yet, but it's nice for saving ammo. Even though I have like a shitload of gunpowder and like a few resources to just craft ammo.
I'm just the old-fashioned way. I just stick with the handgun. Good
Stick
enough.
with it. I have the handgun, the free shotgun that you get. I missed the free shotgun the first time around because I totally forgot about it. I'm like, oh yeah,
You missed the shotgun?
I missed the free shotgun the first time through the village. I had to, on the village revisit. I got it.
Okay, that's how I got it. Was I literally went to the room with the shotgun, and as soon as I pulled the shotgun, they just stopped going after me. I was like, shit, I didn't even get to use it. Nice.
I forgot about the free shotguns. That's how long it's been since I played Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, I beat it a lot back when I was a kid. I mean, I think I even beat the professional mode back then.
Oh yeah, professional was awesome. I love
It's a very fun game. It's like
Yeah.
there's a reason why it has like this huge following even till now, right?
yeah.
But considering like how they do this remake, are you looking forward to if they ever do a Code Veronica or a Resident Evil 5 remake?
I don't know. Resident Evil 5 is such a weird game to remake. I don't know how you remake that game. to be
You
honest.
literally, I don't think you literally could make that game today.
Yeah, I
That game
don't.
is very messed up because the game is absolutely no fun at all. But if
No,
you play on a friend, it
yeah,
is like
I
the
don't
greatest
think that's
game
what
ever.
people were
Yeah.
talking about, Chow.
So
It-
it's like, how can you sell that? It's like,
I don't
it's
know.
like me and my friend had like complete different experiences because one, it's like we played it completely together and we beat it and we loved it. But when we played by ourselves, we felt miserable all the time. You know?
Do you remember how they did split screen in that game in Resident Evil 5?
You could. It's like the horizontal thing back, like
Yeah, it's like the asymmetrical horizontal like widescreen like on the top and the bottom.
Yeah, like it's like
Weird.
top left, bottom right.
Yeah. Man, that was so fucking weird. That was like that's like one thing I remember about the split screen in that game. It's like, what in the world is happening?
They have to remake. I have to see how he punches the folder.
I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna. I mean, there are definitely like story allusions in the Resident Evil 4 remake that like mentions like Resident Evil 5 stuff, but I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna do it. I don't know how you do it. To be honest, I wonder like if they're gonna do it. I think the biggest change. I know there's a controversial one, but I want them if they're gonna do a Resident Evil 5 remake, try to make that a fun single player game.
Yeah, it would work. It's a very
That,
Yeah,
hard.
at the
like,
low hurdle of make this game fun.
but
in
no, like
single player.
make it like it's like it's not really that fun as a single player game, but it's a really fun multiplayer experience. I want them to like basically redesign that whole game to make it like make it one a fun single player experience, two, and I know people are getting pissed off at two only be able to play it as a single player game.
Yeah,
No,
definitely hard sell.
yeah,
So,
because you can always play. I mean, now you can play the Resident Evil 5 with a co-op partner. Now they got rid of Games for Windows Live on it. I mean, you can go back to Resident Evil 5 and play that as multiplayer and have fun with it. But if you're gonna reimagine that game, challenge yourselves and make that only single player and make it really fun.
man, you're putting them on the spot.
Hey man, go big or go home. That's what I think about remakes. Like if you're not willing to like really like just change things up fundamentally, then like for me it's like when it comes to remakes, then like it just to me that doesn't seem interesting, right? Like remasters and remakes are kind of like different things to me. Remasters are more like touched up versions of like the same experience that might look visually better. Remakes are to me are something that like you just radically change everything. Like how Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4 are very good examples of like games that are not the same as the original game. Aside from just looking different, they're structured very very
Yeah,
differently.
they're completely different games. That's why
Yeah,
you'd be like, oh,
even down to mechanics, like they're not the same games as the original games. So like, and then like stuff like the Dead Space remake earlier this year, it's like it looks very pretty. No, don't get me wrong, and there are definitely some tweaks to like the level layout in that game that like are not from the original. But if you're playing it basing off of like is like was this the original game, or like does this feel like the original game? Like to many people, it's like it feels like the original game. There are some different things here and there, but it's largely the same game you've played before. And there's nothing wrong with that as a remake philosophy. But for me, it's like it's much, much, much more interesting if you just dare to just change everything up, you know. So that's how I think going into it when it comes to remakes, because I've already played the original before. Like I don't need to play a remake of the same exact experience.
yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I know a lot of people. I know I hate doing this comparison, but when the Final Fantasy VII remake came out, people were so upset that they didn't get the original game. I'm like, you know what? I played the original so many times. I
Yeah.
don't want the same experience. I don't. It's like nothing is gonna be a surprise.
Yeah, I mean FF7 remake, like it's like that's a very good example of something that just like reimagines everything. The only hurdle that it's like hard to like swallow. It's like if you want the whole thing, you're gonna have to wait years and pay like what a shitload more than you did the original game. Forget like quote unquote the complete game, the original FF7 storyline, because of the way that they're staggering development on that. That's a valid criticism.
That
For
is a
sure.
valid criticism, but when
But
you
but
compare the
so-
length of the game is like, there's already like enough that is even. I would say it's even longer than the original game, because the original game's not that long, to be honest with you. It's like, but people like to blow it that it's super long. But
because people played like FF7, especially for a lot of them when they were younger. Like it was at a time when like PS1 RPGs felt like they could go on forever, because you didn't know the scope of the game, but like you just like kind of explored probably more than you needed to.
Yeah.
But
It was 3 whole discs.
that's right.
it's like 60 hours long RPG. It's the longest thing ever, guys.
And then you also think about that, like a lot of that the game time is also conflated by random battles. Just like, hey, you're running around this hallway. There's like 5 random battles. It's more extra time on top of that as well.
Like
So,
I feel like it's impossible to finish a lot of the RPGs these days because everyone feels like they're like 100 to 150 hours long. Cough personifying Will, stuff
mhm.
like that.
But
So
even then, that's almost like the exception to the rule. I feel like I feel like that's like the last 100+ hour
Is it?
RPG that like a lot of people feel like they've finished.
I mean, is it though? Because like the
I
last like
yeah,
4 Trails games have been like 80+ hours long, and
maybe that's with all the guide fight
I,
writing.
I, yeah, I'm thinking more mainstream. Like Trails is a very niche, hardcore fan base. I would say.
I think if you tried to like get through all the side quests and read all the dialogue, I'll take forever to beat. I
Like
mean,
I don't think like the number of people who have consistently completed Trails games to go like and followed it are is a much significantly less number than people who played Persona 5 to completion
yeah.
mainstream wise.
I remember when Persona was niche.
Uh,
not niche anymore.
I
yeah.
remember when
Well,
Atelier was niche, and now it's knocking on 1 million.
We'll find this new series that's not niche and we'll make it mainstream. Ask Libra guys. We have
Yeah.
convinced everybody in our Discord channel to play it, and they all do, and they all platinum it. Damn.
but I'm really looking forward to see like what things they have decided to keep and what things they decided to cut in the Resident Evil 4 remake. I have not really spoiled myself on anything. I'm like, what's really next? I'm really excited to like progress more into it. I really want to see if they have the laser hallway scene in the game. That
People
fucking
love viewing the lasers back in the original because it came out at the same period of time as the movie came out, the live action movie where there's a
yeah,
laser room that cuts people,
so fucking stupid.
and then it's like Leon dodged everything, and you're like, "Yep, Leon's a pro. These guys are scrubs."
It
But
feels so weird that there's no QTEs in the game though. Like I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. It's like I understand why you don't have QTEs anymore for sure because like even back then like like this was during a time when like QTEs were kind of like they were
New.
very actually well not new sort of new but they're very sensitive of like what like the inputs that they demanded like you had to actually time it well and like mash enough to get through it like as QTEs throughout the years progressed on like they were kind of like more like lenient about like oh like you mash A to get through this and like as time went on it's like you don't have to mash A that much but in base Resident Evil 4 you're like fucking mash that fucking A button for dear life to run from this boulder or else you're gonna fucking die.
they just dropped it, and you just press one button to dodge it. Really,
Yeah,
it's not quite the same. But I don't really like QTEs. I think they're some of
yeah,
the worst.
yeah, that's why they got rid of it. It's like
Yeah,
it's a very it's not a popular mechanic to put into games anymore. It's not something that people really like doing
it's like we throw
anymore.
this thing out of nowhere, and you got 2 seconds to react to it. And if you're not, you're a dumbass, and now you're dead.
That's right.
It's like,
Skill issue.
it's like what? Like, no, they're the worst things ever. And you know what? Even some RPGs have QTEs, like Final Fantasy 13-2. Like, why
Mhm.
do you have QTEs?
Why not?
It's like,
Not to mention Xenoblade.
Yep. But
oh,
they even got rid of QTEs in the third one. They don't have the on-screen controller prompts anymore for the Xenoblade 3's battle system.
Honestly, good.
Like it threw me off. I was like, where am I? Why can't I time? Where's the circle with the A button to time it? What the fuck is going on?
I love how
Oh.
if you emulate Xenoblade Cross, one of the things you can do is you can just turn on like auto complete the QTs, which you
That's
kind of need
funny.
to anyways, because if you played at 60 FPS, that's like the one thing that's broken
Oh
otherwise.
yeah, that must be really fucking hard. Just time like manually. Yeah, I can see it. But yeah, I mean that's just that's our brief Resident Evil 4 remake discussion that branched off into 10 other different topics.
yeah, it's RPG site. Resident Evil playing game site.
That's right.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, it makes sense.
Well, those two games were the two games that I'd earmarked a longer period of time to discuss. I put two other games here to just look at, maybe 10 minutes each. I talked about in the last section how I had finished Octopath 2 in the last week. Now, we've already talked about Octopath 2 like 2 or 3 weeks on this podcast, so I'm not going to dive into it any more detail there. But I do agree with James's assessment that it is really good, and I won't be surprised to see it competing for a top 10, if not top 5 spot later in the year. One other game that I just started later this week and a little bit this morning, I'm about 20 hours in, is that I've been playing Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Now, this is another game that we've talked about a few times on this podcast, so I don't want to go spend too much time on it here, but it's mostly been primarily James talking about it, along with, I believe, Josh had played a little bit during that PC stress test demo, whatever they called. So I figured I'd just chime in here a little bit just to offer my own opinion, at least briefly, especially as someone who is coming in thinking really highly of Neo 2 and really eager to see what this team can do, and eager to learn about the setting of this game as a fictionalized version of the Three Kingdoms era of China. One thing, my brief thoughts right now is that at a high level, this style of game to me is just comfort food. I love the zones. I love the combat. And I can't have this conversation without avoiding the word Souls-like, but it feels like putting on, a comfy pair of boots or some familiar shoes that it's familiar. It's not shaking the boat. It's not doing anything novel in terms of the way the game is compartmentalized. So I'm really just enjoying that familiar feeling. What is new to me is the combat is much different. When James was talking about Wolong back when it released earlier in the month, the primary point of comparison wasn't really Neo, though there was a bit of that. It was more Sekiro than anything, which is a game I actually haven't played. It's the one From Software game that I just haven't played yet. So the speed and the style of combat is a little bit different for me compared to Neo. Though obviously there are several points of comparison where those two realms overlap. I kind of see where James was coming from when he talked about how a lot of the weapon types in Neo 2, the weapon types each have very, very involved, intricate weapon art trees or skill trees of the ways that they work, where that's kind of absent in Wolong. Wolong in general, the progression is a lot more streamlined. And James explained it at the time, but I didn't quite, I guess, latch onto it with the way that when you level up in this game, you basically have 5 attributes that you select. Each one is tied to an element. And that kind of compartmentalizes everything. Your weapons are scaled based on your strength of specific elements. Those also determine which spells you can cast. They also determine your raw stat increases. Like melee damage is mostly tied to fire. Stealth is mostly tied to water, things like that. So it's very, very streamlined in that way, which I don't dislike it, but it just feels very different. Like the fact that I'm leveling up very frequently. I'm only like on the 6th main level, and I've already leveled up maybe 20 times or so. And I'm like, I guess I'll just keep dumping into fire because my weapon scales off fire. That gives me melee attack, and that's kind of what I want. I guess I could put a little bit into water because that gives me a stealth ability that I want to be able to cast. So that's kind of been a big shift for me, is that I don't really have to think about build craft all that much. It's more based on skill and execution. It's more of an action game in that way than an RPG, though obviously still very clearly an RPG. The combat itself, I remember one of James's notes that he stated is that the red-eyed critical attack that pretty much any monster can do, from bosses to the most basic undead zombie, are basically the bread and butter of this game's enemy combat and design, where if you manage to parry that, you won't really have an issue with anything. Like, that's the one skill you've got to get even decent at, and once you do, everything else just kind of comes along with it. And it's very generous. Like, I've played Metal Gear Rising way back when, and I was dog shit at parrying in that game. And even in like Dark Souls, I always use a shield rather than the shield parry in that game, which is much more deliberate and slow. But in this game, I feel like I'm parrying everything, not because I'm good, but just because the window is very generous. So it makes you feel like a badass, which I actually don't mind. but there's certain times where I'm playing Wolong, where I see like I have like 2 or 3 enemies on me, and I end up going into like panic button spam mode. Like, oh shit, parry. And I end up just fine. And I'm like, well, I survived. That wasn't based on my skill or luck. It was just kind of like sloppy. I outlasted them. I don't know if I deserved to survive that encounter, but I did, and I'll take it. That's the one thing where I feel like this game comes up slightly short of Neo 2. In Neo 2, every time I beat an encounter, I knew that I had learned the fight. I had executed it well. My build was well set up, and I basically had practiced the fight because I had died a few times. or if I lost a fight, I knew what mistake I made. I knew what I needed to do better. In Well Long, there is still plenty of that. It's not completely randomness chaos all the times, but it's not infrequent that I survive a fight where I'm like, I have no idea how I survived that, but I'm glad I did. So that's the one thing that just doesn't feel as tight. It feels just a little bit looser, a little bit sloppier. I'm not trying to say that as a judgment call. It just feels less deliberate and more like just you can outlast your opponent if you deal more damage and have more health than them.
Yeah, I think that's the weird thing about Wolong is like there's that whole morale system where you kind of level up in stages, and like and there's a certain point where you can like kind of like level up enough to kind of quote unquote over level the boss. So if you're having trouble like with the boss, like you just have to kind of like if you want, like you don't really have to, but if you really want to just like over level the boss and you've been dying, you can kind of like quote unquote grind on enemies to like get like go over their level. Or if you just haven't, if you've been playing well and didn't really die at all in the level, you'll probably be primed in a position where you just like naturally over level them. So like any hit you take isn't as much as like what they would normally do, like if you were on par with them or maybe one or two levels below them. It's kind of a weird cadence to it. It doesn't it to me, like none of the bosses in that game, I did complete the game. Like never really felt as intense as some of like Neo's more crazy bosses.
Yeah, it's like it's been fascinating seeing like the thing like with these types of games you'll always have like certain bosses that a lot of people have like the most issue with, like Millennia and whatnot from like Elden Ring was like the one that a lot of people had trouble with, but it is striking just how consistently like the one boss that people have trouble with in Wo Long is either the tutorial boss or Lubu. That's basically it. That's the two bosses I've seen anyone have any trouble with. Everything else is just like, eh.
I actually struggled with the boss. It's like a plant viney creature that you have Hong with you casting the lightning spells. But even then, when I say struggle, like I died to it 3 times, beat it on my 4th, which maybe for some people are like, wow, that's terrible. But for me, like that's actually not too bad. That's not too bad in terms of number of attempts.
I mean, like we're talking like struggling. I mean, like people have like maybe 10 plus tries. Like for Millennia, obviously, like for a lot of people.
I couldn't beat Millennia until I used Mimic Tear before they nerfed it.
Oh,
yeah.
But even on some like Neo bosses, like there are definitely some that will take you over 10 tries because you're trying to get a flow of like how the fight goes, what their attack patterns are, what are your opportune striking times depending on your build.
Adam,
so
who's that asshole that had the 2 fire axes? I hate him. But I remember
Neo.
both. Yeah, both me and Adam struggled with that dude. Yeah,
or
I
not bull, the elephant dude. I remember that guy in Neo too. Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I don't know. I don't want to be, I guess, too harsh because I did enjoy a good chunk of my time with Wo Long. But I think by the last third of the game, I got bored with it because I was pretty much done with my quote unquote build of choice. I did like a Earth build, and I was mainly pole arms. It was just very like a good survivability build that focused on like my thinking was like, hey, like this game kind of becomes obsolete because of like the numbers game that you do with the morale system, and if you focus on survivability, if you die less often, if not at all, in a level, you'll get to a point where you kind of over level the boss. You'll be on par. You'll be slightly overpower them. You won't take as much damage. And that's kind of like where what my approach to that game was ultimately, and like and my tactics weren't like really ever challenged. I was like just deflect well, and use like my stamina bar either for like enchanting my weapon with lightning or get heals back every time I hit something. But I like none of my martial arts are really worth a damn spend my stamina bar on, because it was all about sustainability
Mm.
and and kind of just lasting, and that was basically it. And maybe to some extent, maybe it's my fault that like I just kind of focus on a more quote unquote boring approach. But I was like,
Yeah, you over optimized.
but I just like it's like, but the game never really challenged me, like to really push me to do something different, I guess.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, like for me, it's like Wolong's a great game. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
sit here and say it's not a great game. It's
Mhm.
just like it's like I keep saying, like there are specific things about Neo that made it like beloved by so many people that are just straight up not part of Wolong, and it's like they were right to not say, oh, it's like a Neo game. They made it its own thing, because it is its own thing. It's like there is no guarantee that if you like Neo that you'll like Wolong, and vice versa.
I think there is potential to like make a very very good game out of it. Like if it got a follow up, a sequel. I think that like the building blocks and the foundation, the pillars are there. They just need to like kind of rethink some of the gameplay systems and balance systems that they kind of put into place. Like and think like about like some of the encounter design. Like I think if they
I think a
if they
minimum.
go for
Sorry.
it.
I think a minimum for me that I keep thinking back to is that there's only ever the one response to an enemy attacking you, and that's deflect. And
Yeah.
Sekiro understood that you needed to have some attacks that you either had to jump over or you had to do the Mikuru counter.
Right.
So it's
the
like you
victory counter.
very specifically had to be looking out for those tells. It wasn't just, oh, deflect, and not to mention Sekiro's like deflect, like parry was way tighter than Wolong. But I feel like that's something that's important. Like From Software understood that yes, you can have a game that's primarily based off of parrying, but things will get old really quickly if that's literally the only thing you have to do for fights.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think of a lot of it for me is like you said. I think they need to start, if they're gonna make a follow up to this game, like start introducing like new encounter types and encounter designs that emphasize that like deflect cannot be the only answer. Like there these sorts of like attacks and attack patterns will will break through deflect and will damage you if you try to deflect them. If you even try to think about it, you have to
Mhm.
find other new ways to counter them, new ways to sort of and like make sort of like your builds and matter. Like it's kind of weird that like for a game that tries to emphasize like the martial arts part of it, a lot of the martial arts kind of just feel kind of toothless in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, because some of the martial abilities are really good at breaking the enemy, but so is just parrying them.
Yeah.
I will
So
say, I in general, I like the well, maybe like is a strong word, but I appreciate the morale mechanic. It's something different. I think it kind of rewards exploring, where you and the way that the battle flags and the what I forget the small flags are called, the war tracking flags. I just think I think the level design in terms of the environments I'm at a level right now that's like a snowy battlefield between the varying armies led by Sun Jian against Dongzhou. And it's a really open map. It's got a lot of different like alternate paths. You've got the ballistas raining down on you, which is a fun gimmick that doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome. It's not too punishing. And I like where I'm like, should I go down into the valley? Should I go this way? Oh, this way I can make my way up and around. The
I
levels
think
themselves are a strong carryover from Neo 2 that I'm enjoying, just taking my time and being really exploratory and finding all the nooks and crannies. Go ahead, James.
I was just gonna say, I think that level in particular you're talking about is probably the one I like the most from
yeah,
Wolong.
I mean, thinking that too. I'm like, yeah, I think that's like the last standout level. That I was like, yeah, that was a really
Well,
cool
no,
approach to that.
I think the one that deals with the water levels is also very good.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there's definitely it's the level design in that game is also kind of hit or miss. There's some really good
very all over
levels,
the
and
place.
then there's some ones like the one with all the ships, where it's like it's very easy to lose track
Yeah.
of where you've been, where you are, because all the insides of the ships look exactly the fucking same. And it's like,
I don't like that level. I don't like exploring the sewers with Cao Cao. That was that like I like Cao Cao, but I didn't like exploring the sewers in that game. It was like, I don't really enjoy the environment layout and that. But it's It's an interesting like I can't hate on the game too much because I am a Three Kingdoms fan. I like Three Kingdoms. I read the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I played the Dynasty Warriors games. I'd be stupid to say that like man I really dug like the interpretations of those characters in this game. I played the game of the Chinese voiceover and I was like this is really damn good Chinese voiceover they did.
Damn,
So,
that's a surprise. I thought they usually don't include Chinese voiceover.
no, they did for this and
That's a good thing.
they knocked it out of the park on that end. So
But I'm
yeah.
enjoying Wolong. It's mostly because I just enjoy this genre of game in general, and it's something different because I don't have the Sekiro experience. Plus, a lot of the strengths that I did like from Neo 2 specifically, I haven't played the original, are still here, and it's different enough where I'm like, no, this is something different for me, and I enjoy just that in and of itself.
They're definitely if they're gonna do a sequel, I feel like they're definitely gonna like do an equivalent of like Sekiro Firecrackers in the sequel.
Oh, absolutely. I hope they do.
Yeah, it'd be great to like kind of like weaving in consumable items into your combo and like and making those things like dramatically shift up like the tempo of fights.
Will there be a fight in Wolong 2 that also feels like it was directly ripped out of Dark Souls 3?
You know, I mean, you kind of almost got there with the tutorial boss fight when it like flings out its arm, almost. So, maybe.
The very last game I have listed here, just to talk about very briefly, is a game that came out in December that we have talked about in a few contexts, but I don't think anyone here got around to actually trying until this week. And that is, of course, the remaster for Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, which has a full title that I'm blanking on right now. Crisis Core Reunion. So I think, did all of us play the original PSP version? I assume so, but I don't know for certain.
I have.
Nope.
Sure.
No, you didn't. Okay.
James did briefly for his preview.
Briefly. I after I played a bit of the remaster, I was like, well, obviously I need to play a bit of the original to get a proper like judge of how things have changed. I booted it up, played the tutorial battle, immediately deleted it from my system.
Yeah, the original game is not that great. You basically just stay out for the ending.
It is one of those experiences where like it has aged poorly in game because it was designed for a system that only had one analog stick, and they had to design the entire game around that.
Well,
I'm
that's
not sure
right.
anyone feels this way, but does it feel like a mission-based gacha game, but without the gacha? In some ways.
So a mission-based game.
Does anyone feel that when they played the original?
I mean, it was kind of stupid, right? Because like that's kind of like the whole crux of the system. The what was it called? The digital mind wave DMW system. What's it called?
Oh man.
Maybe we should hand the conversation off to Adam. Had just recently played through and finished the Crisis Core remaster.
No, I think you guys are doing a good job.
It's like pulling teeth to try to get Adam to talk about this.
I like how Adam's just sitting here as like, you guys are fucking idiots.
All right, Adam, come on. You have to have one opinion. You have to have one opinion on Crisis Core.
Okay, so I'm pretty neutral on this game. The ending is great, but what Chow was trying to get at is that this game was made for the PSP in an era before smartphones, and so there is a design to this game. And I'm not talking about controls. I just mean the design of this game is mission based, where there are 300 missions in this game. A lot of them are really bite-sized. A lot of them have like, or almost all of them have like no story relevance to anything whatsoever. They're just like little, like, oh no, we're testing new weapons. Go ahead and beat up 12 enemies or whatever it is. And so you go on these little like tiny maps to fight some battles and then fight a boss, and you do this 300 times in these missions, separate from the main game. It's very clearly designed to be like a commute game where you're on the train or whatever before smartphones, where you couldn't just browse the internet or play a phone game. You're like, well, let me get out my PSP and just do a couple of missions, kind of like a time waster. So that's kind of what the design of the game was. And the remaster, it's all intact, it's all there. So it does kind of feel like if this game came out as a new game today in 2023, the mission structure just wouldn't work. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, you just 300 random small tiny missions that have like no relevance to anything and are almost copy paste. That's kind of what the game is. So, it's taking a game from 2008 and re-releasing it now in like a different context on platforms, on PC and whatnot. It's very different, kind of mindset in a sense. Now, the game itself, if you're somehow not aware, is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, the original. It stars Zack, who, if you played Final Fantasy VII, you might know, like, oh yeah, Zack is mentioned a few times in that game, and it's sort of a spoiler. I know James has not played Final Fantasy VII, so he might not know exactly. Like,
I mean, not everyone knows what happened. Everyone knows what happened.
You know what happened, but you don't know like how Zack relates to Cloud exactly and whatnot. But
yeah,
the end of the game is, kind of the highlight of it. Now, Final Fantasy VII Remake seems to switch that up. I should mention, this game doesn't have any remake content. Like, it doesn't have like a new ending or anything like that. I know people were wondering, and obviously I'm 3 months late to this, but it's just, in terms of the story and everything, it's all the same. But obviously it's good context for those who maybe, like, I'm thinking of someone like George, who used to write for our site, who he played Final Fantasy VII Remake, he loved it, he never played the original. It's like, well, this game might offer some context to future entries of Final Fantasy VII Remake, although it's technically not like in that same canon or in that same version of Final Fantasy VII. So that's a key reason why they released it, I think, is it does offer context regardless. But yeah, otherwise the game itself, the combat system is much faster, much smoother. You don't have that DMV slot machine kind of like pausing you every 20
Is it
seconds.
DMV or did you say DMV?
DMW, sorry. And it also makes the game a lot easier. I know this is kind of silly, but the fact that the game controls a lot better and isn't like pausing you all the time, it's an easier game now. The reason why I played it really was that Square Enix released a ton of games last year, and I got to, half of them, but there's still several I haven't gotten to. I'm like, you play this game, it's not very long. Even doing absolutely everything, I think, like literally absolutely everything, I think I was like at 25 hours. So not a very long game. And like I said, the game itself, you can learn more about Zack. His new voice is kind of weird. I think the new Genesis voice is actually really good in English. Not talking about Gact, but otherwise,
clips I've seen, the voice acting feels very stiff. But I see like the voice actors, like when they did the 7 remake, they were very excellent. But the clips,
that's the thing. This game doesn't have like choreographed cutscenes. Not very many. Most of the scenes are like pasted over PSP models doing like canned animations, and then you like slap a voice on top of it, and that does it no favors. So. But anyways,
I remember when you were playing it, you were streaming it in Discord, and maybe this was obvious, but the expectations for what this game were, at least through the marketing, were, I guess, they were framed in a way where obviously all the marketing was showing the game at its best with a couple of fully, animated scenes. Like, wow, this game is actually more of a remake than a remaster. But you're basically saying, like, no, it's very clearly a PSP game and it's at its skeleton.
Yep.
Like, it's not even trying to hide it.
Definitely a remaster, if there's no question about it. They took some assets from Final Fantasy VII Remake and kind of like slapped them over some of the geometry and textures. But like otherwise, you can very clearly tell like models are doing canned animations over and over. Very battlefields are very basic and simple with what my friends like to call Japanese game flat ground syndrome, where they just have all the ground is just like completely flat. There's no terrain or texture or anything. It's just like a barren flat field, because that's how it was in the PSP game, of course. So it very clearly is just a PSP game with like new assets pasted over the skeleton of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fine. That's like I said, I'm pretty neutral on it.
It's fine and it's short.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, Crisis Core is such a
very...
like you said, it's always gonna be like a battle. When I think about Crisis Core, it's always gonna be something like I just played in spurts and never like something I sat down and played for like multiple hours. It just never was that kind of game for me.
It also has more mini games than I expected, which coming off of Final Fantasy VII is maybe should be expected. Like I completely forgot there's a section where you're running along a field outside of his hometown, I think, and there's like a sniper mini game where you pick up a sniper rifle and shoot these robots like an almost like
God, that was a thing. Yeah,
I
no,
like,
that's
I
something that.
completely
Oh
forgot
yeah.
about this mini game, but
Oh,
yeah.
weird. How would what would a Crisis Core remake look like if they tried to maybe remake it? Is that even possible?
I'm not even gonna answer it. It'd probably just be like Final Fantasy VII remake.
I guess.
It would be like an appendix to like a Final Fantasy VII remake game, like a tier. If whatever Final Fantasy remake, what's the second one called?
Rebirth.
Rebirth, Reunion, whatever. If whatever Final Fantasy VII Rebirth does, I could see like now you get to play the Zack chapter potentially, or learn his history or whatever, and it's
chapter prologue.
Yeah, like an appendix of some sort, but yeah, or whatever Square Enix wants to do. But no, I at least I know it was a bit. I know it's a game that we kind of had tempered expectations, but figured we hadn't had a chance to speak to it. I don't think at any length of any sort on the podcast, so we gave it a little bit of its window here. Kind of a known commodity
for it. Yeah, I would like to play that and hear Gacked again.
Mm-hmm. Well, that covers us for the games we've been playing section. So thank you, James, Josh, myself, Adam, and I guess Chow basically had played all those games we had talked about.
Except for Wulong.
Yeah, except for Wulong. But
I mean, we could talk about Free Kingdoms, and we could talk about the failures of Sima Yi.
Well,
God damn it, Chow. We're gonna alienate our whole entire fucking listener base if we get into it. We can't do this.
Well, yesterday before me and my friend watched anime, we spent 2 hours talking about the Free Kingdoms. We were talking about how Sima Yi's reign of terror. Well, not really reign of terror, but how his descendants all got fucked up.
I mean, like ultimately, like Sima Yi was kind of like the quote unquote winner because descendants, Jin came out of the Descendants land.
I love how Josh says, "God damn it, Chow, you're going to alienate our whole listener base," and then immediately starts getting into it himself.
I'm sorry. Whenever you get Three Kingdoms, you're like, "Want to talk about Three Kingdoms? We should talk about Three Kingdoms." You're right.
Yeah, I think it's the greatest story ever told. Okay,
dude, it's such a fun thing to talk about it.
We'll head into our feature shout out and our news section here. We actually have a handful of features up on the site in the last week, and I believe we have 3 of them listed, or 4 of them listed, and I believe 3 of them are all from James. A couple of these are topics that we've already gone through on previous episodes of this podcast, so I don't think we'll linger on them too long here, but we'll still shout them out because James has written up and put them and published them on rpgsite.net. In no particular order, we talked at the very end of the podcast last week about how, of course, the shutdown of the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShop is stranding several games, not just RPGs, but lots of puzzle titles and interesting titles that will no longer be available to purchase and download. Since we covered that on the podcast last week, maybe not any additional discussion here, but James wrote up his thoughts about, from a preservation angle, about how disheartening it is that those things are shutting down and we don't have like a solution in sight for the practice in general, and just the preservations of games across the industry, across different publishers, is not in a good state. James, I don't know if you had any other additional context that you wanted to put on there, or if we'll just move on to the next one.
You pretty summed it up pretty well.
I'll commend James for the main image of choice to use to advertise this feature.
I was looking through my Xenoblade Cross playthrough screenshots, and I saw it, and I was like, "It's perfect!
It's perfect! It's fucking brilliant!"
To be clear, he does keep the images of the countdown clock in Xenoblade Cross.
Specifically the cutscene when they introduce it, where they say, "Yeah, that's not just like any clock. That's literally a countdown before we all fucking die."
Good game.
The second feature that went up on the site, very straightforward. It's been a while since we've officially reviewed as a site a Destiny 2 expansion, but James took the time to play through Destiny 2 Lightfall. He's talked about it on the podcast. I believe it was either 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. But he formalized his thoughts on playing through the expansion and wrote it up as an official review on the site. So now we have another Destiny 2 expansion review on rpgsite.net for Lightfall.
Something tells me it'll probably be the last, because it does not look like that review's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Gave it another shot. So, oh well.
Here's a feature that I didn't even know that you had written. I must have just missed it, or I was really busy in the middle of the week, so I might have not seen it when it gone up. We've talked on this podcast early last year, back in January 2022, when Pokemon Legends Arceus came out. All the Pokemon games that were released in the last 12 months, we have kind of spoken how it didn't set the world on fire, but it was enough of a shakeup that was worth a little bit of commendation for that series. And you wrote up a feature whose headline is Pokemon Legends Arceus proves that there is a place for Pokemon Colleseum in 2023. Now, that is a very targeted headline, so I'll give you a chance just to speak to it here about what this feature is going for and like what specifically you're looking at here.
Yeah, so that feature kind of just happened because during my shift, I asked Alex exactly, hey, what do you want me to focus on today? And he said, well, we need more features. And I was like, okay, let me look at this calendar. And Pokemon Colosseum's North American release date just happened to be like, I think either the same day or the very next day. So I was like, okay, I think I have something here. Pokemon Colosseum obviously is kind of infamous for being the first non-handheld Pokemon RPG. And I say that, but I think the other thing it's kind of infamous for is for how it's very much way more of a traditional RPG versus the Pokemon games, where it's like you have a somewhat predetermined party. There's much less options and choice for how you can build your like Pokemon arsenal, and it's just got more of a focus on a plot versus the Pokemon games prior to that. Like obviously we've had games since, like with Pokemon Black and White and obviously Legends Arceus and even like Scarlet and Violet to a degree. But Pokemon Colosseum was the first Pokemon game to really have. Yeah. And for a while I always kind of thought it was a shame that we didn't have more Pokemon games like it. Like it's odd how like sometimes with games you can gain a lot by clamping down on the scope of what it is. And I feel like even if Pokemon Colosseum wasn't perfect, there was definitely some benefits to it. Like there's only it and XD Gale of Darkness are the only two Pokemon games you exclusively play with double battles, and I think it would be neat if there was more like Pokemon experiences that kind of focused on that. And I think that it would be really neat, especially now that like not every Pokemon game is expected to have the entire cast of Pokemon. It would be very neat if we had another game kind of more like Pokemon Colosseum structure. And the crux of the argument I made was that, well, Legends Arceus is very much a different sort of experience versus like mainline Pokemon, even compared to Scarlet and Violet, which came out after it. And I think that kind of proves that the series itself doesn't have to be so rigid and that there's room for mainline spin-offs, if that makes sense. Games are very much using like the same sort of framework of the mainline Pokemon series, but not so rigidly in the sense that they're allowed to kind of be their own thing, to have their own like mechanics, their own sort of their own sorts of I guess I use framework, but framework is also a good way of saying that.
No, that makes sense.
Now.
No, they can
I'm not sure if folks agree with that, but I think that like as a project, Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness were interesting, and especially seeing that the series is perfectly capable of being successful even outside of the like tried and true formula. It would be nice if we saw more games like it going forward.
I don't remember if I really got into Colosseum, but I really got into the Stadium games on the N64. I kind of miss those.
Yeah.
What was that Pokemon battle game that came out like 7 years ago?
Pokken.
Yeah, that was
Fighting
right.
game Pokemon,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, I remember that. I
felt-
don't know how that is these days, that there's still a scene for it or not.
Yeah, I know
there's a scene for everything.
Enough. I know that Pokken DX got like a season pass of new characters, and after that there was pretty much nothing. So it's like I don't know, like if it was just like release timing or the fact that Switch is not a great platform for fighting games unless you're your Smash Bros.
You should have Arc System Works make a 2D Pokemon fighting game.
And then we'll not have to lay. I mean, we'll have to lay net code.
Yeah, after all, as we know, Arc System Works fighting games on Switch are not allowed to have rollback.
Oh yeah, that's right. I just remember, I remember the DNF Duel announcement they did a few
Yeah,
days ago.
that's what Chow and I were definitely talking about.
Jesus Christ! I totally, yeah. Oh my God, this is that just like
It's probably a CPU bottleneck.
yeah, didn't this happen like not multiverse, the Nickelodeon fighting game? Wasn't that the case too, where it had rollback on other systems but not on Switch in like some cases? I think that was it.
I don't. Did Mortal Kombat 11 have a similar thing?
This is your guys' realm, not mine.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think so. I think it might be just a technical limitation.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's like some people will be like get upset when you say that, but it's like sorry to bring it back to Ryza 3, but a side note about that is because of it being a much more open world and also having to run on the Switch, there's a lot of technical shortcomings in regards to the visuals and like pop in and texture quality. That's very clear. It's like they had to get this game running on a Switch first and foremost. So especially when it comes to like smaller Japanese games, I think I'm less excited for a new Nintendo console for the Nintendo stuff, but rather just for a new baseline for those sorts of games.
I know we moved on from Ryza 3, but I just have to ask: does it feel like it's been compromised because it feels like it was built for the Switch, and now that the other
Visually,
platforms
yes. Visually, yes.
Got it.
Even on PC, visually, you can tell that it's restrained because fundamentally you are playing a Switch game that looks and runs better.
Sonic Frontiers.
Yep.
Well, and James has a feature on comparing the potential of Pokemon spin-offs, looking at Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Colleseum on the anniversary of Colleseum. Was it like a major anniversary, like a 10th or 10th?
It wasn't.
It's way older than that, right?
I don't know if it was a major anniversary. It might have been the 20th year anniversary because I think that was 2003.
Oh yeah, yep. So 20th anniversary, 2003.
Yeah. So yeah,
and that's actually a perfect segue. Because the other feature that went up on the site is from one of our newer contributors, Paul Skrelly. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. He wrote up a feature just earlier in the month about Final Fantasy X-2 on its 20th anniversary. Both he and Quentin wrote up two features on that game's 20th anniversary, looking at both its story and its unique approach to its battle system. Well, this week it's a different 20th anniversary, so lots of those coming up. And that is for Wild Arms 3. Wait, 20th? 25th?
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it's older than that.
I think it's actually 21st.
Oh, no. Okay. No, so Wild Arms 3 was 2000. Wild Arms 3 was 2003 in the West. It was 2002 in Japan.
It was 2002 in Japan and North America, 2003 in Europe.
Oh, gotcha. So there you go. So 20th, 21st, what do you want to call it? And yeah, 1996 was the original Wild Arms. But anyway, speaking about Wild Arms, he wrote up a feature talking about, looking back at the Wild Arms series. Obviously, it's been dormant for quite some time. Has that spiritual successor follow-up that was kickstarted last year in Armed Fantasia, which has fans of the series, excited and looking forward to that. But though it seems like it's still a ways off. But he was looking at and basically a retrospective on specifically Wild Arms 3 as in his estimation the best entry of that series. So I don't have experience with Wild Arms. When I think of Wild Arms, I know Adams recently replayed. I think he recently replayed through Wild Arms 2 on the PlayStation 5's PlayStation Network.
Has trophies now, had to.
And as the person that I associate as a Wild Arms fan, do you agree with 3 being the best, or do you disagree? Or what are your thoughts here?
Like 3 is a popular one to be the best, but people also really like 5 and also 1 and also 2.
What about the spin-off? Is it XF?
XF is also very good, but it's a spin-off.
Yeah.
It's a very good strategy RPG, but it's not a traditional RPG like the other ones. So the reason why there's such a let me just pick out Wild Arms 3 and 5. A lot of people like 3 and a lot of people like 5, and one reason why there's kind of almost a split there is because Wild Arms 3 has the battle system and the other systems that were kind of built up in 1 and 2, and then they switched it up in 4 and 5, where they now have this hex system. Yeah. And so some people really latch onto the hex system and some people don't. And all that system really is that there's now like a positioning element to your characters in battle. It's almost like a mini SRPG or something where like
a hexagon based placement, right? Yeah.
Right. And so you had to like not only it wasn't just like a turn-based system like I don't know Persona or Final Fantasy, like classic Final Fantasy. You also had to position a unit in a spot. And 4 and 5 added that. And some people really liked it, some people didn't. I think 3 and 5 are both excellent games, and I really wouldn't fault anyone for saying either one is their favorite. But he was Paul basically was this article was mostly just like a late review. He didn't really have like any hook to it other than I like Wild Arms 3 and I'm gonna write about it, which is fair. But yeah, Wild Arms 3, the only thing that he criticized, which I agree with, that kind of the older Wild Arms games were kind of trying to play around with was when you're exploring the world map, you kind of have to discover the spots on it. And you discover these spots like dungeons and towns and whatnot by talking to people, and then there's like a search function you do on the map, which is in practice it gets a little bit tedious where you literally just kind of run around the map pressing the search button and like where is it.
I tell you, the search system is the worst thing they ever introduced, and it all started from 2.
Yeah. 5 has a similar system, but if I remember
Yeah,
correctly,
every game has a search system after 2.
I think 5 is easier.
Even the remake of 1 has the search system, so then it's automatically trash.
4 doesn't. Because 4 doesn't have a world map.
That's why I guess there is that. I'm saying even the remake of 1 included the search system, and that's the worst thing they ever did. So I am sticking with the original.
Yeah, but that was the one thing that Paul mentioned also is that the search system is just you kind of have to deal with it.
I don't know, it's a system that never worked out in the first place. Why just keep it mandatory? I don't know why they think that system's good, but I don't know. It's also like the olden days where there wasn't much internet feedback, so if there was any criticism, no one's gonna really know.
But yeah, like Adam said, it's kind of a late review of Wild Arms 3, but hey, it's always kind of good to see a different opinion on a game, especially when that game came out before RPG Site was a thing. So I think it's always nice to have kind of a catalog of retro reviews, even if they're not reviews in name, especially if, Arm Fantasia gets, spins up into its marketing cycle. And I know it's not a Wild Arms game, but or only is in spirit. But if we have, Wild Arms games that are accessible through like the PlayStation Store or, God willing, they end up on PC or something like that. Be cool to kind of have some of these to be able to look at.
I'm just gonna say, am I strange to think I like the first game the most for me personally?
No, not at all.
That you see that a lot throughout the Wild Arms fandom as well.
I also think like the villains in the first game is really cool. The middle demons. It's like these guys are like so frightening when they first showed up. When you see that little balloon goes in the sky and the sky turns fucking red. It's like,
Which
yeah.
one's the one that has the dude that punches the missiles?
That's 4.
Okay, that's my favorite one. Just based on that alone, that's the only thing I have to judge on.
Not only does he punch missiles, but he jumps out of a plane and he has like it's like a single barrel shotgun, like a one-handed thing, and he like is flying through the air by shooting the gun as like propulsion.
That's how he propels himself.
Yeah, he's like flying through the air, shooting his guns as propulsion. He's shooting the missiles, and then he runs out of bullets, so he punches the last one.
I mean, that's how you do it. That's
Wild Arms pretty much a consistently good series throughout its entries. I don't think you can really go wrong with any single one of them.
4 does have some interesting components where like each place on the map, like each dungeon has like a kind of an optional puzzle you can solve in the dungeon. And once you solve that puzzle in the dungeon, you can turn off encounters. It's kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like as you go through the dungeon the first time, you have random encounters, like you did in that era. And then some of the other games mess with like you can delay encounters for a while or whatever. But it was just like, hey, you solve a puzzle, and once you solve the puzzle, you can delay encounter or you can turn them off. I might be getting some of the details off because it's been a while, but it was location by location.
I was just gonna say you collect some gems in some of the games too.
Yeah, those gems are like healing and whatnot. You just pick up.
Well, that covers us for the different features that we have up on the site. So go ahead and give those a read. We have the 3 by James and then the 1 by Paul. So here we are. We're 2 hours in. We're going to go into the news section here. Not a lot of major headlines, but the number of headlines here, we're kind of filtering in a lot of release dates, a lot of 1.0 releases in April and May. So I'll try to keep the discussion on each individual item here abbreviated to make sure that we can get through all of them in a timely manner.
I guess before we dive in, I just want to give a follow-up on the FF16 PAX East panel thing. It concluded the live stream experience was kind of a mess with like the multiple times of the stream going up and down. There was not really any new news to come out of it. They're just basically kind of introducing the game and then answering some questions. They did show some more gameplay, and the times that they actually got like with Yoshida actually got hands on with the controller to show off gameplay. The stream died, so it's supposedly going to be archived at a later point for everyone to watch. So just mentioning that, nothing new came out for FF16 out of that
didn't
panel.
announce a demo.
No, it didn't announce anything as far as I know.
fully expect a demo though. Square Enix's demos are everything.
Yeah.
I hope so down the line. Maybe, hopefully.
Maybe they got scared after Forspoken's demo.
Wow. I have a silly question to ask, Adam. You said you finished a whole catalog of Square Enix games. Did you finish Alan Wonderland?
No, I said Square Enix released so many games last year, and I couldn't get to all of them. That's why I played Crisis Core. Like, all right, this came out.
But when
I was playing Neutral Song when Crisis Core came out, which is a much better game.
Once I get back to Octopath 2, the very next game I'm going to play after that is Harvest because I still need to finish that.
Yeah, for that long.
Yeah. So many long RPGs lately. It's just kind of ridiculous.
I think that's why I went with Resident Evil 4, because I know this game won't take up 60
That's like calling out like no more RPGs.
We give up on RPGs.
Yeah, well, that's why
RPG site.
I was hoping for Crisis Core to be short, and Dragon Quest Treasures, another December release that Paige covered for us. I want to get to that, and apparently it's also not too terribly long. So I'm like, thank goodness.
Dragon Quest Treasures, it is now far into the point that like maybe just wait for a PC.
Wait for a PC port or a random Game Pass deal where it just shows up on like Xbox, like what happened with Builders 2.
Yeah.
It depends on if it's a 6-month or a year exclusivity on Switch. If it's 6 months, we'll probably see it in late May. If it's not, then we'll probably see it at the end of the year.
I'm in no rush.
So looking at the headlines here from the news front, there really isn't a clear, this is the thing we have to talk about first. But I knew what it couldn't be. So there's a thing that I earmarked for a second. But first, I'm going to talk about a headline that I was not expecting to read. There is no media attached to this, like trailer, screenshot, logo, art, or anything. But Adam, I'm looking at a news post that you put up just a couple days ago on the 24th. The headline reads, an action RPG based on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles graphic novel, The Last Ronin, is in development. This was supposedly revealed by a vice president for Paramount Global in an interview with Polygon. So I don't know if there was any
Paramount Global, I guess, is who owns TMNT. So they're like the license holder. So they're not necessarily the publisher of this game. And also, we have no idea who is developing this game. So it's basically just like as soft of an announcement as you can get. But they're making, an action. They call it an action RPG.
But there's an interesting comparison that they use.
And they compared it. And I'm pretty sure the guy compared it, not just the Polygon editorial, but Rosen was his name. He was like the president of
Doug Rosen. He's an executive at Paramount Global.
He compared it to God of War, like the recent God of War titles, which is a little bit kind of like weird ground.
It's an inside joke, kind of.
Yeah, I was actually very casual in the article on this. Like, well, we like RPGs, but we don't typically count God of War as an RPG for our scope, even though you can argue, yes, it has like skill trees and stats and whatnot. So like it could be, but we didn't cover it. So anyways, that's the game to compare it to. We obviously haven't like seen anything yet. And I guess I'm not a TMNT expert. Are any of you? I don't think so.
Yeah,
I like TMNT, but I didn't read The Last Ronin.
The Last Ronin is a graphic novel. Like I think it was like 5 volumes that came out in 2020, so not that long ago. that features one of the turtles in like a futuristic New York, wielding all the different weapons of all the turtles, and there's a story behind all that. So it's like, I guess it's gonna be like a single player game. They do mention, Rosen mentions that there might be points where you play as other characters because that's how the novel works out, where like it'll follow different characters at different times. But otherwise, yeah, this is all speculation. So I covered it because it's kind of interesting because I know they released that Shredder's Revenge game, Dotemu did, like last year, or was it 2 years ago? That was pretty well received, I think.
Do you know what this announcement reminds me of?
What?
It reminds me of, like, it's so rare nowadays that we get a game announcement without anything to go with a logo. Like, I mean, in other medias, like in film media, I think this would be more normal, but in game world, it's different. It reminds me of when not Jedi Survivor. What was the first one called? Fallen Order was announced. It was Vince. Was it Vince Zampella? It was
yeah.
He was sitting in a chair at like the EA E3 event, and it's just like, yeah,
it wasn't like a special chair. It was like front row, but he was just like in the crowd, like in the
Yeah.
audience.
and I remember he was just like, yeah, we're making a Jedi game. It's going to be about the dark times. Yeah, it's going to be neat. And then this at least has a title.
Oh yeah, I remember it now. Yeah, that was so good. It's like I can't really say anything else.
That's what this reminds me of. It's just some executive being like, "Yeah, we're making a TMNT game. It's going to be like God of War. It's going to be great." It's like, okay.
Hey man, look, if it leads to like something like Jedi Fallen Order from this, then sure. Yeah, this is, I don't know. It feels far off. I mean, it's cool. I would like to see it, but it feels very far off from where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
They even say it's a few years off.
Yeah,
probably more than a few.
You know, game development is hard. So, well, I mean, the last few TMNT games have been good, like Shredder's Revenge, like you said. There was that TMNT like arcade collection, separate from that, and then like I guess the only one I remember like before that is like the Platinum Games TMNT game. I don't remember anything about that.
I just remember those were like very bad games that almost put them bankrupt or something.
Well, I mean, they just kind of like to keep the lights on. They did a lot of licensed projects, right?
Yeah, there was even the Transformers one or something.
The Transformers game was neat. I like the Transformers game from them. I still have it before it got delisted.
Wow.
That was a fun game. I still have it. I can play it anytime.
All right, here's the second headline. Compile Heart has announced a new Neptunia game.
So this couldn't be the first headline. You just didn't.
Yeah. What
Okay. Here's the question. I'm gonna defer to our Hyperdimension Neptunia expert, Hyperdimension Kieran. Is this actually a new game, or is this another remaster?
It's not a remaster. It's a new game. It's not a mainline game. Oh my god!
It's been. Oh, never mind.
It's a new game. It's not a mainline game. It's still a spin-off. What's the name of this game, Brian?
Neptunia GameMaker. Help!
Help!
It's right there. What the hell?
Neptunia GameMaker R:(Evolution. So it's Revolution. Both R and E are capitalized, but there's a colon between the R and the E.
Help! Oh man. Yeah. So this is a new.
So I want to make sure I have my Neptunia recent history.
All right. Here we go.
Straight. There was that remake, whatever that came out for PS5, which was the original game packaged again. There was the one that was Neptunia cross Senra Kagura.
Yeah.
And then there was Sisters versus Sisters. Was that the same or different?
That's another different game. That's a different spin-off.
So in
English.
So in the last like 2-3 years, we've had the crossover spin-off, the Sisters spin-off, and then that remaster of a remastered one.
We've been on Neptunia spin-offs for like 5 years, dude. There hasn't been a mainline game since like Victory, which was like 2015, 2016, maybe 2017. We've been on Neptunia spin-off games for a long while, and it's always the same thing with every single one of them, where people like Victory, and we're like, oh, we can't wait for the next mainline title because Victory was like a fun game, and then they never made another mainline title again.
Well, here, this is actually surprisingly topical. I'm just going to read this paragraph that Adam put in here. This is described as a spin-off entry featuring adult Neptune in a warring states-like era where the three main game developer nations are competing with each other.
So Free Kingdom's Neptunia.
Yep. That's what I was thinking.
So this is like funny, right? Because like
it could work. It could work. There's the three main. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
it's not Xbox, PlayStation, and whatever.
Yeah, there's like more like failure, like historically failed like game consoles in the past. Like the first ones that they, because let's bring it back. The Neptunia series, is like parodies the game industry, and like the traditional three main characters or four main characters are I'll start with the side ones. Is like personified Xbox representative, Sony representative, and Nintendo representative. And then the main one, Neptune, is a fictional what if Sega made another console after the Dreamcast representative. In this one, you have one of the major characters that was first introduced in the last mainline game, Victory, adult Neptune. She was a fun character.
Wait a minute. I did not actually realize, because I don't play Neptune yet, that's who Neptune's supposed to be. Does that mean after that one Sega Hard Girl spinoff that she's officially a Sega Hard Girl?
She's technically, if you, but adult Neptune is a different character from Neptune. Yeah, this is how it is. Adult Neptune is a separate character, if I remember correctly.
Just like Baby Mario is a separate character from regular Mario.
Yes, exactly like that.
I don't know why, but I really love that comparison.
Baby Mario.
I wasn't prepared for it, but I'll agree.
So, are you telling me that we will see Engage Chan and Ouya Chan?
Oh, okay. So let's
wait. Oh my God, are we gonna see a Stadia Chan?
So here right now, like there are three game developer goddesses who lost the race for market share in this game, and then now adult Neptune, who came from another dimension, is like, she's now having to revive like fallen developers. And like the three fallen goddesses asked her to become the president, the shacho of saving the gaming industry. So the first three that they introduced in this game, Sanako is back as the illustrator for this game, is PP, which is supposed to represent the Apple Pippin, Jarga, which is supposed to represent the Atari Jaguar, and Ladeo, which is supposed to represent the 3DO. So those are the first three that they've shown off. They have their own, special forms as well, and then they have like a shitload more of character slots at the official website for this game. So anything like the sky is the limit for fucking failed video game console.
Yeah, just to be clear, I've covered enough of these games. I haven't played any of them that I, get some of this by osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
But in the regular game, the characters are called like the CPU goddesses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But in this game, these like other characters, they're called the failure goddesses. So they're like the personification of failed consoles, and we know those three. Mm-hmm. And I guess there could be more later.
Yeah, so. there could be more because there's a lot of character slots still to be filled in. So, yes, there could potentially be an N-Gage, representative here.
I made the Ouya joke earlier.
Ouya's not off the tail.
Stadia Chan.
I'm thinking Satellaview. I feel like Satellaview is almost guaranteed if they're gonna go down that route. But it's
Have you ever played a Stellaview game? Like for emulation? That thing is the worst UI in order to get a game running.
Bad. It's pretty. I played it like at a relative's house many years ago. Many years ago, they had one lying around. I didn't know what the fuck it was until many years later, though. I didn't know this was Stellaview until like I saw it, like a screenshot. I was like, oh.
He has some very relics.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, once again, it's a Neptunia spin-off title. I think that's like the one hook about it that's like really funny is like failed video game console representative.
Also, they haven't really described this in detail. It apparently has like a combat system not too dissimilar from other games in the franchise, but it also has like this game development like management system.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the title, really, GameMaker. So like they haven't really shown that, but it seems like it has this other subsystem that'll play a pretty major part in it. So if you're an Neptunia fan, look forward to that.
Yeah, there might be like a management sim like significant element to it too. That maybe will manifest in a cool way. I don't know. I'm always very like, it's another spin-off Neptunia game. Not to say that I'm like super excited for the next mainline one after like 5 or 6 years. Just like I don't know, like I don't know. I don't know what I want from Compile Heart anymore. Maybe I don't want anything from Compile Heart anymore. Maybe I'm just like, or Idea Factory. It's just like, yes, or but people say sisters versus sisters. If you're a Neptunia fan, it's like been the most fun to play one for forever. And look, the last one I played that I had to review was the Neptunia VTubers game. That was god fucking awful. All right.
Damn.
It was-
Last Compile Heart game I reviewed was Arc of Alchemist, which basically
Would you give it a 2?
yes.
You
Also,
for that?
well, there was one person that called me a dumbass for it, but the thing is I was vindicated when that same game showed up on Metacritic's worst games of 2019 or 2020? One of those two. It literally showed up on Metacritic's worst games of the year list, so I was right. God.
Well, yeah, I don't know what I want from Compile Heart. I don't know what, but I'm gonna fucking play another Neptunia game at this point.
I think what's the last thing I reviewed for them? Maybe
Yeah.
FN Request. I feel that game would work out.
Okay,
amazing
that was
as
actually a
visual
decent
novel.
game from them.
It would have been better if it was a visual novel.
Yeah, I
Like
didn't
just
like
straight
the,
up.
Yeah,
I didn't like the gameplay aspect, but as a visual novel, this game would be like god tier.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But yeah, Neptunia GameMaker help our evolution comes out August 10th in Japan for PlayStation 4 and 5 and Switch. It'll get some more details in the next episode, the next issue of Famitsu Magazine. And I don't know what the typical turnaround time for getting Western announcements.
I mean, it was already featured. That Famitsu issue already came out.
It did. Okay, sweet. Yeah, sweet. This isn't actually an announcement, but it's kind of the teasing of one. And this is like, I don't know if you can go more 180 degrees from Neptunia to this than what this is. So THQ Nordic is teasing the possibility of re-releasing the classic RPG Gothic on Nintendo Switch. Now, this doesn't look like it is related at all to the Gothic remake that was available to play on Steam and didn't seem to do very well in my recollection. This is
the demo, you mean?
Yeah, the pre-play demo, whatever it was. Which I just remember the feedback to that seemed largely negative, or at least very lukewarm. This looks like this basically is a lot of images from the THQ Nordic Gothic game like social media channels. Using like they show a screenshot of the original Gothic game saying we decided to switch it up for a bit and tease something different. Stay tuned. And last year they had shown like a New Year's post with a Nintendo Switch on it with a Gothic screenshot on it. So it's kind of like very thinly veiled teasing of releasing Gothic on Switch. Gothic originally released in I believe 2001. Very much a cult RPG. It was originally developed by Piranha Bytes.
Especially in Europe. I guess a lot of Europeans of a certain age like have very, very fond memories of this game.
So don't have any idea as to how that game feels or plays or would do in a modern environment, but again, kind of goes back to that game preservation aspect. I don't know if a Switch release is the most ideal place for game preservation, especially when the game's already on PC, but just to make the game more available to more people, especially those that have like an innate curiosity about what this game was like if they're maybe too young to have played it when it originally released. So if it gets a Switch port and the Switch ends up being a system that can potentially do well on, then I'm all for that sort of experimentation. Why not?
I'm just thinking like the thing that the image that pops up to my mind is like a train full of old Europeans playing Gothic 1 on their Switch. They're like, yes, finally bringing our childhood on the go.
And the last announcement that we have here is the announcement of another King Arthur RPG. And I'll be honest, these are starting to blend together, so I'm going to try to be charitable here. This is King Arthur Legends Rise for PC and mobile, announced by Kabam Games, published by Netmarble. Adam, I don't know if you saw it.
This is actually kind of funny. I actually originally put. Actually, I think I need to change this. Published by Netmarble, developed by Kabam. And they actually emailed me and they're like, no, Kabam is a studio of Netmarble, but it's actually being published by Kabam, not Netmarble. Like, oh, okay, I'll change it.
Understandable mistake.
Because Kabam, which I'm not very familiar with, is a Netmarble studio. So I just kind of made the misinterpretation, I guess.
So this was announced at GDC, it looks like, or at least that's where it was showcased. There's this very short preview trailer, literally 30 seconds, mostly artwork, logo, a few snippets of gameplay. It has an isometric, very Baldur's Gate-esque feeling, CRPG feel to it. There's some screenshots. The screenshots are a lot of like close images, basically showing off like the model and texture work, rather than like the gameplay, actual isometric perspective on it. What this reminds me of is that wasn't there like this really grim, dark King Arthur game that came out like a year or two ago? King Arthur Knight's Tale. It was a lot of the same thing. Yeah, April of last year was another isometric King Arthur mythology game. So that's why I kept saying these are starting to blend together in my mind. I don't know if there's a lot of voracious appetite for more King Arthur themed.
King Arthur.
This just feels like it's one of those free-to-play mobile games that I have no idea if it's similar at all, but it's like Raid Shadow Legends or whatever. Just kind of
Netmarble kind of gives that away a little bit. So yeah, it was announced at GDC. It's announced for PC and mobile devices. No other details on a release window or things like that. So figured it's a new game.
This does have a Steam page, and one of the features on that Steam page is collect Arthurian legends.
Hell yeah.
How do you think you're going to collect them in this game?
Hopefully you get Saber.
That's what you do in the Fate games, right? So
yeah, just like Fate. You're right.
Summon a ritual, draw whatever star that you have, and put some candles. Press roll.
Yeah, this has this. It seems like you have like base building the same too, because one of the things is advance your Kingdom of Camelot. Play anytime, anywhere with cross progression.
Now that other game that came out last year, King Arthur's Knight's Tale, is very positive on Steam. So I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, if only I had free time, but these games are all too long. That covers it for game announcements. We have a couple new trailers here. There was another trailer. I believe this also came out of GDC. This is a technical showcase for the upcoming Lords of the Fallen from CI Games. This is slated to release this year. This trailer is, as you might be able to glean from its title, as a technical showcase and coming out of GDC. It's a lengthy trailer. It's about 4 minutes long, but it's primarily a lot of slow panning shots. Basically looks like kind of like an engine teardown more than anything.
It literally has a narrator saying like, well, this is how we do the lighting. And sometimes since this is, if we do lighting in this way, it's very taxing. We add these little like, I don't know the technical term, like these little orbs that we kind of place into the environment that help basically give texture to the, it's very technical. And how they get the visuals to look the way they do while trying to maintain, processing like bloat and whatnot.
More importantly, there was a name change to this game.
Yep, they got rid of the.
So if you go on Steam and you search for Lords of the Fallen, the old game from 2014 is now just labeled Lords of the Fallen 2014 on Steam, and this new updated one went from the Lords of the Fallen to just Lords of the Fallen now.
So it was Lords of the Fallen. I hope I get this right. Lords of the Fallen came out, then Lords of the Fallen 2 was announced, then Lords of the Fallen 2 became the Lords of the Fallen, and now it's just Lords of the Fallen 2023. Okay,
not even 2023. It's just that. There's just Lords of the
Fallen.
Well,
the 20 people are going to call it.
That's what I put it on the site.
Well, yeah, I just said the 2023 thing just because, like, when you've got the remake and how you differentiate these two games 10 years from now, like Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider 2007 or whatever. So
right. So yes,
I wonder how that meeting, like what boardroom were they like having like a bunch of overpaid execs.
The meeting was someone. Yeah, the meeting was someone going, "The Lords of the Fallen is so fucking stupid. We need to do something." That was the meeting. Man, you know what? titling video games is hard. Okay.
Mhm.
Look at Capcom. What are we gonna call this game? Resident Evil 4. Like, okay, all right. What about the old one? Resident Evil 4.
No, I think one is all caps and one is normal title case.
Okay. I know for the listing on Steam because it's also for the Japanese. It's like now they're going like Resident Evil and then it's like
Biohazard.
/ Biohazard.
Yeah, that's how they've always
mine
listed their
too.
Steam pages, which is a bit. I guess it's maybe not strange. It's just very, very complete.
Yeah.
Yep. No ambiguity here.
Because the Japanese super are like, what the fuck is Resident Evil? What are you talking about?
Well, speaking of
missed.
Netmarble, I'm going to move it on here just because I know we have a few more headlines to go to. But speaking of Netmarble, they also during GDC announced or showed off some more gameplay footage for an upcoming Seven Deadly Sins game, Seven Deadly Sins Origin. So I clicked this game. It was originally announced back in 2022, but this new footage from GDC 2023 is the first time it looks like we've covered it on RPGsite.net. So this is a follow-up to the Seven Deadly Sins Grand Cross. It looks like this is kind of another kind of mobile-focused free-to-play game. I'm presuming.
I wouldn't say it's a follow-up to Grand Cross. Grand Cross is like a separate mobile game that's like more card.
Well, that's literally what they called it on their official website. Yes.
Dang. Okay.
Wow.
I didn't
smack that.
Dang. Because I know that was from Netmarble, but I didn't think it was they would call this a follow-up because it seems like a whole new game entirely. Huh.
So, Adam, it looks like my understanding is that this project was announced a while ago. It kind of went dark for a while. They came
the first time they've actually shown it.
They showed about
I think
2 minutes of they showed 2 minutes of footage at GDC, but still no other real details about a release window or anything.
Yeah, I mean this is more of a definitely Genshin inspired. Is putting it lightly, I suppose.
We're gonna see more of those, I presume.
Yeah, I mean it's an open world action RPG. The UI and the way you play it definitely is Genshin like, and like a lot of the gameplay they show here is like you have a seems like an original character that you're controlling, and then you have like a party that you can either summon through your attacks or like do. It's hard to say like what it does like different, I suppose. From just like the few minutes of footage, I'm just kind of surprised they could call this a follow up to Grand Cross, because I played a little bit of Grand Cross when that released, and that's a very different game because that's a turn based game, and then like you'd have a card deck system in it to like initiate commands. So like you kind of say you get like duplicates of cards in your hand, you can like combine them to make a more powerful attack, something like that. So I don't know if this is like linked at all, like story related or otherwise, because
they might just call it a follow up because it's the same IP and it's the next game.
Yeah, maybe.
Like they're just at a super high level.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't really have much attachment to this outside of like there are some. I watched like the first 2 seasons of like the show, and like it wasn't like it was like amusing. I don't know if I'm really looking forward to this either. I was like, I don't know. Any games that like try to copy Genshin is just like, I don't know if I care.
It's like you already experienced it, so it's like nothing new.
Yeah, maybe I don't
know. We do have one sales update. That is that Code Vein. That's a game we haven't talked about in a while. Bandai Namco's anime aesthetic Dark Souls like game that came out in 2019 has reached 3 million units sold, which is not too shabby. It looks like
actually a friend put that into context. It's like outside of something like the Souls series and some of their fighting games, that's probably one of the best selling titles for Bandai Namco. That's better than that's better than practically every Tales title. Better than a lot of their anime, licensed stuff. Like not as much as some of their fighting games and Souls, obviously, but otherwise pretty good.
Well, I just because we were talking about it earlier and I was curious, I looked up some news and it looks like that's in the same ballpark as Neo 2. In 2021, Neo 2 sold 2.5 million. I'm sure it sold more since then, but in the same ballpark, like Neo 2 and Code Vein are selling on a similar order of magnitude. So that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I wonder if they have any like future plans for that. That seems to be. I wonder like how it got there, pretty much like when I remember when this game was coming out, like people were like saying this is a fine game, but I didn't think it actually like sell this much. It just didn't seem like that from where I stand.
The cynical way to look at it is that I saw some people saying this on Twitter, like, well, it's been on sale for like $10 every other week. Of course it hit 3 million. It's like, well,
the thing is
Okay.
that's
other games go on sale too. So,
yeah, I don't think that's like that's people try to treat that like an asterisk. Like, yeah, it's been in bundles or $5 a pop. But so are so many games these days. It's still a milestone.
Mhm. When's Scarlet Nexus gonna get 3 million?
did
Is
we
that hit-
ever get a sales update for Scarlet Nexus?
I feel like we
they had like
did.
1 million players because they had to include
Game
Game
Pass.
Pass.
Yeah.
Whenever a game's on Game Pass, it makes it harder because like 1 million players, like, well, okay, so it's not technically sales, but sort of.
It's weird. Video games are weird. But sure, I mean, do you think we're gonna see a Code Vein 2?
Okay. Yeah, Scarlet Nexus has sold 1 million, and then Game Pass helps it to 2 million.
Oh, okay.
That was last year. So
Should I play Code Vein?
yes.
Okay. No, I'll wait
Back
for
on
those.
it next week.
Yeah, I'll wait for that $10 sale.
There's still quite a few headlines here, but it looks like most of these are like updates or release dates. So hopefully this will just be something I can kind of rattle through pretty quickly. Elden Ring over the last week just did another one of its major updates. It's had a handful of these, so I don't want to get too in the weeds. But the main thing here is that it added support for HDR and ray tracing, or maybe it was just ray tracing and it already had HDR, but specifically ray tracing. So I haven't touched the PC port since launch, but I know it was not in the great state at launch, and it seems like they put in a lot of work to try to improve it. And of course, they've announced without a lot of fanfare or details the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion coming out. So I'm looking forward to revisiting with some of
I
this
still
stuff.
laugh at how they announced that and when they announced it. It was like in the middle of the night in the West, like everyone was asleep. They just sent a tweet. It's like, yeah, we're making this. Peace out.
Well, I remember on the podcast episode for that, like it was one of those news headlines that I just read the headline and moved on because it's like, okay, we've got a title and that's it. Like Shadow of the Erdtree, it's coming, and then we had to move on because there's really nothing else to chew on.
I can't wait to see like what the ray tracing look like. I didn't actually like I didn't want to reinstall Elden Ring for just to see what it is, but like if the Digital Foundry video,
It's just shadows and ambient occlusion, which means that most of the time you're really not going to notice it.
Okay.
In general,
it's since it doesn't have DLSS or FSR, it's people seem to generally agree it's not worth the performance impact.
That's what I was gonna say. Like in every game that I've had that's had ray tracing, I turn it on and then like experience for a bit, but then when I'm actually like wanting to just play the game, it's even in the best case, it's just too much of a performance hit for the trade-off, in my opinion. But
I've been playing Resident Evil 4 Remake with ray tracing and FSR.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess now that DLSS 3 is out and FSR has been massively improved since its debut, hopefully we're at a place where we can combine those with ray tracing to get into play.
Support.
Funnily enough about that, Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry, it's basically saying that the FSR2 implementation RE4 make is not the best, and you're generally better off using just the interlacing mode, which is basically it's checkerboard rendering.
Is that just like an option you can turn on in there?
Yeah, it's an RE Engine option specifically for the Resident Evil games. They have it. It's checkerboard rendering. They generally seem to agree it does a pretty good job. So especially if
the options,
especially if you're at a higher refresh rate, it's going to generally do a decent job.
Okay.
So.
I don't know if this was a shadow drop, but Ni no Kuni II Revenant Kingdom got released for Xbox last week on the 21st. I don't know. Is it on Game Pass too?
Shadow drop. Yeah, it's on Game Pass.
They had announced that it was coming at Tokyo Game Show last year. They basically said the original Ni no Kuni is on Xbox and the second one is coming later. So we knew it was coming. We just didn't have a date or anything. And then they just kind of showed up on Game Pass one day.
I'm pretty sure it's probably a case where if I was Microsoft, I'd probably make deals and then just like sit on games to have like a cadence of games to come out so they can say, here's your Game Pass lineup for this month.
try to
I'd
meet them
imagine they
out.
probably
Yeah.
have something like that.
Year of level 5, baby. It continues.
Yeah, apparently.
Did level 5 even develop Ni no Kuni 2? I thought they
Yep.
only did the first. They did? Okay.
Here's another just about shadow drop of the week. The Voice of Cards trilogy over the last couple of years. We've had the 3 games released in like a year and a half. That's Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars in 2021. And then in 2022, we had Voice of Cards, The Forsaken Maiden, and Voice of Cards, The Beast of Burden. Square has announced the Voice of Cards trilogy pack for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and PC, which launched on the 24th. So now these like little bite-sized, smaller, well, maybe bite-sized isn't the right word. These smaller focused experiences that all kind of released in a rapid cadence, rapid succession, now have been kind of packed and bundled together and re-released on those platforms that I just stated.
Yeah, and also they're now also available on mobile as well. So there you go.
cool.
I feel, they lend themselves well for a mobile touchscreen experience because like you're just kind of selecting commands and just kind of moving from tile to tile. Nothing too elaborate.
Honestly, shout outs to Square for continuing to be, as far as I can tell, like the only like publisher to consistently release actual games on mobile devices.
Yeah, they still believe in the premium mobile market, which is fucking amazing, to be honest.
I mean, they gotta have like a decent enough like return on investment if they keep doing it.
Did you know you can buy the Trials of Mana remake and play it on mobile?
I think I learned that from this podcast and that episode. I'm like, wait, really? Like, it's fucking crazy.
I am pretty sure that smartphone is the only like platform where you can play the remakes for all of the Mana games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they also like recently like went back and like made a mobile port for like the first Dragon Quest builders.
Yeah.
And then like they did some stuff to that like enhanced the mobile experience and UI for it too. It's just like it's cool that they do it. You're totally right. And like in a better world, this is where mobile gaming should have been, like more premium games and more tailored experience for that instead of the current hellscape it has become.
Until they do a port or remaster for War of the Lions, the only modern platform you can play that game on is smartphone.
Yeah. Well, that rumor has been floating out there for literally years. So one day
It's been
it'll
percolating.
manifest.
So hopefully, yeah.
Look, it's just like how Metal Gear Solid 3 is gonna get a remake soon, guys. All right.
Mhm.
I can actually believe that though, since we have that Silent Hill 2 remake happening.
Final Fantasy IX remake any day now.
Just like the TV show or like the anime that's getting right.
I mean, if Legend of Mana have an actual anime, anything's possible.
Man, we're not going to talk about it, but that fucking adaptation went really weird. It went to really weird places.
I only watched the first episode, so I don't know where it went.
It didn't go to good. It wasn't good. Where it diverged at a certain point, and it was not good.
That's a shame.
This next headline's a little bit more of a deep cut. That the Wizardry, the 5 Ordeals that released last year in 2022 on PC. Now the game was originally from 2006. Then it launched on PC, Japanese only, in 2021, and then English language support came in 2022 for Wizardry: The 5 Ordeals. It's getting a DLC pack called Prisoners of the Battles on March 30th. So if you are
this properly, the original releases, the 5 Ordeals was a PC game. Prisoners of the Battles was a PC and PS2 game, and it was almost like a separate game, but in that Wizardry Origins like grouping. So now they kind of attached them together for this re-release.
Mhm.
I might have that slightly wrong, but
well, it's kind of a convoluted history, so
exactly,
a little hard to.
Wizardry, a weird history. So.
But it sounds like as of March 30th, you can get both of those little components together in English on PC for Wizardry: The 5 Ordeals. So if you're a masochist, you can go enjoy that.
I saw someone on Twitter reply like, "How does an early access game get a DLC?" It's like, well, it's sort of early access, sort of not. It's very strange. It's
I
actually
mean,
a 20-year-old game.
yeah, it's a very old game. It's actually just recently. It's being considered as one of the 12 finalists for the Hall of Fame. That news barely came out like on March 15th. So like along with Wizardry, the like games like Age of Empires, Angry Birds, Barbie Fashion Designer, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, Computer Space, FIFA International Soccer, GoldenEye, The Last of Us, NBA 2K, Quake, Wii Sports, along with Wizardry, are being
Oh, the
considered.
original Wizardry. Okay.
No, like Wizardry is the series, not just the original.
Oh,
Like NBA 2K, like that's more considered as like a franchise.
aren't NBA 2K games like full-on RPGs now? We should cover them.
That's what I've seen.
Where it's like you
But-
literally like go to the city and talk to Jake from Allstate or whatever.
I mean,
I'll take your word for it.
We were saying earlier about how it looks like Street Fighter 6 is going to have that RPG mode. Do we cover Street Fighter 6?
I don't know.
We covered Grand Blue Versus.
I wrote a feature for Grand Blue Versus because it had a single player mode that was like an RPG, and I wrote a feature for that. So we'll see. Well, we have a lot of talking to do, I guess.
If we get level ups and stats, then
But does it have floating damage numbers? That's the ticket.
That's
Only if you do trading.
a fighting game that did have floating damage numbers and level ups and stats. Blaze Blue back with the Abyss mode.
Abyss mode.
No, that was more like a roguelike.
What was I thinking? It's not Battle Fantasia. It was like the Shining game. I don't know if you leveled up. I think there was like damage numbers in that. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I mean, Wizardry. It's cool that like there's a modern quote unquote modern Wizardry game that's like getting continual support on Steam. And it being like it's kind of weird and somewhat heartwarming to see that's like it's being considered as one of like the finalists for the Hall of Fame. It's like you think about like the legacy of Wizardry and what it has done for the industry over the years. So it's kind of inspiring, that it's still kind of trucking along, doing its own thing, and fighting the good fight out there. Whether you agree or disagree with how it does things, it's kind of separate matter. But it definitely brought out it definitely expanded the RPG genre in very important ways throughout the decades.
Moving into, I was going to move into April releases.
Yeah, I was going to end it. I was like, whether you're masochistic enough to enjoy them. Yeah, that's a separate matter too.
Moving into April releases, the final expansion pass wave for Fire Emblem Engage will launch on April 4th. It is called the Fell Xenologue. At least that's what the story scenario is called. It seems like it is a side story where takes place at an alternate version of the world where the divine dragons are defeated, and it introduces new pairs of twin dragons. And it basically seems like it's incorporated very similarly to the Cindered Shadows or whatever it was called for Three Houses, where it's a little independent story beat that can supposedly be undertaken partway through the story, where the levels are fixed. You'll recruit some new characters. It's the 4 fiends or the 4 fangs or whatever they're called, and bring them back. The 4 whatevers, yeah, and then bring them back into the main story once you complete the Xenologue DLC. So, in general,
that's what people wanted,
yeah.
Right?
Well, I remember when this was announced. I remember Adam made a comment just saying I wasn't expecting all the expansion stuff to be out within like 3 months of release, but yeah, that's pretty much when it's going to be.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about like the development of this game and like rumors and speculation of like behind the scenes of it seems like this game has been kind of done for a while behind the scenes, as part of intelligent systems. It's concerns like it's not crazy to think it's like since they had so much like lead up to like the development of this game and so much time that it seems like the DLC was pretty much we're just ready to go distribute as well. That's why it just came out so fast. It just in some way it is kind of like the pessimistic, cynical take on that is like, why didn't they just include it into the base game then?
Well, I mean, if it was always developed with a separate budget for it's like this is going to be DLC content down the line, if it was like a separate team. I can understand, like, from a development standpoint, they'd be like, well, gotta charge separately. It's just very weird when it's very clear that this game might have been done for a while before it released, and it just makes the time frame of said content releasing be a bit awkward.
It's like, but I always think of like how Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 released in the same year as Marvel vs. Capcom 3. You know,
and it wasn't an update. You had to buy a separate disc.
Exactly.
And they did the same thing with Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, didn't they?
I don't know if it was the same year.
It wasn't the same year, I don't think, but it was definitely the same exact thing because it was like only a disc release.
Yeah, it was only a disc release. Yeah. So that, like, maybe I'm old, but it's just one of those things. Like it feels like I get a bad vibe like when the DLC gets released too fast for something, and like it feels like maybe it should have been bundled in then to the base release. But that's just me. Like I feel better like when it's like something like Elden Ring, like announcing like a DLC that feels like it's been in like it was clearly put into development either very late into the game, like the game development cycle, or like maybe something that was decided after the game released potentially, But instead of like that was always like part of the pipeline of like, yeah, we'll just roll it in, because that's just part of the system these days. That's just me.
This next headline is another April release, a game that we have not talked about in this podcast before. It is a game that released in early access on PC in 2021, I believe, and that is a game called War Tales. It is an open world isometric RPG that apparently has sold very well in its early access phase, and it will be going into its 1.0 full release on April 12th. I remember Adam, when he was looking at this, kind of described it as one of those like sneaky popular games where apparently this game released in early access a couple of years back, and a lot of people have just really dug it. It's got 9,000 reviews on Steam, 90% positive. And even when we posted the news post, a comment on our site underneath it, some guy saying, "I've already got 100 hours in this game. It's great." So I'm like, I don't know, like maybe I'm kind of interested. The trailer, the footage that's included is
cinematic.
It's cinematic. It's kind of I don't want to use the word generic, but it's kind of well-worn high fantasy. So it looks like a very clear fantasy inspiration, like Tolkien-esque or King Arthur-esque or whatever you want to call it. It's got the isometric gameplay, but it's also described as open world, which I think is kind of potentially an interesting mix. I'm eager to at least potentially try it just because the word of mouth is so good. It's one of those things where if this had kind of average reviews and decent word of mouth, I'd be like, okay, it's an interesting, fun project. But the word of mouth of this game just seems like, and again, this is War Tales coming out in April 12th. It just kind of makes my, kind of perks my ears up. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll look into this. Let's see what it's all about.
It seems really neat. It also supports like co-op as well, like a full-on campaign with 4 players. So if you're looking for RPG to like just like play with your friends, that seems like a decent one. I wanna check it out too. I want to see what this is all about. This seems like something that's just like I am always on the lookout for sleeper hits, things that should maybe get recognized. One might say in a very crowded genre.
Steam is telling me this game is similar to Divinity Original Sin. I'm like, I maybe, and also Octopath Traveler 2. I'm like, hell yeah. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what Steam thinks. But yeah, that's War Tales coming out in April. I'll give it a shot. All right, I hope I can give it a shot. Also coming out in April, we have the full release of Honkai Star Rail, at least for mobile devices and PC. It will be coming out on PlayStation. I believe that's 5. Later, the date hasn't been confirmed.
PS5 and PS4.
Oh, it is 4 and 5. So I know Honkai Star Rail. A lot of people like it's had plenty of beta periods. So I know a lot of people have actually already played good chunks of this game in those windows. But the full release will be on April 26th. Alongside this announcement, we got a lot of new screenshots, and it looks like Adam's linked a little bit of the program footage here. I don't know within this stream recording how much.
That was the official like press release. Like, watch this stream archive or whatever. Like, okay.
But yeah, it's a lot
Right.
of this. The stream archive is like developer commentary. It looks like a little bit of music performances with some gameplay and art thrown in. I don't know to what like how that delineates out in terms of how much
There's
footage is
there's
shown
like a
there.
turn-based RPG. The next thing from
I saw some.
Universe.
Let's call it like Persona 5 inspired RPG. It's like you just be turn based.
Uh,
All right, Chow. What are you thinking on this? Yeah, as our Genshin expert, what is the give us the lowdown on this?
well, it looks good, but I'm not sure I want to commit to another gacha game. I had to quit another gacha game to make time for another one. You know.
Oh, so Genshin has taken up too much of your time that like you're just like I don't know if I can commit.
Well, I have free gacha games. I play Grand Blue Fantasy,
Mhm.
Epic 7, and Genshin. There you go.
Yeah,
One of them has to go if I want.
no, all of them are basically second jobs. So you're right.
Well, I'm doing Grand Blue right now. I'm killing a new raid. I'm killing Siete.
Like I said, they're basically second jobs. I don't know. Should I try this out? Should I try it?
I think it looks good. I mean,
Will I like it?
you know what? I was kind of surprised they didn't
Uh-huh.
release on March 7th. There's a character named March 7th. You have even the app icon is March 7th. The character's name's March 7th, by the way. And you missed the deadline. How could you? How could you not release this game on March 7th?
Now they have to get another character named April 26th.
DLC.
You know, her name actually works out pretty well in Japanese. I think it was like Nana Mitsuki or something like that.
Oh, really? That's so stupid. I didn't think about that.
It works out in Japanese.
That's so dumb. All right. Okay. So Shao says this might be cool, and maybe I'll enjoy it. I guess I'll enjoy it. Here's what I predict. I'm gonna do this like Genshin. I'm gonna play this for a lot in like 2 weeks, and then get through all the launch content, and then never touch it again after I run out of content.
I'm always the late joiner. It's like you see, like when it's like by the time when I was in Genshin, everyone's already burnt out and they were bitching about the stamina system.
I was just like, I don't want to keep up with this game. If I have to wait this long in between content and like the current content to like kind of do maintenance on it is like not that interesting. Then, but this might be more consumable because it's a turn-based thing, so you're not exploring an open world and burning dozens of hours doing so. Maybe and like if this has, I'm sure it's gonna have cross progression between PC and mobile. Like maybe I don't know. I hear there's like up to 100 free rolls at launch for this game. So if it's reroll friendly, maybe we're in there because that's how brain broken I am.
I think gacha games should just let you do unlimited rerolls. It's like I'm just gonna delete the account and redo it until I get the roster I want.
Pretty much. One would think at this point, but most of them are just like, nah, fuck you.
It's like, why waste my time?
And think about it like this, Chow. If you have to re-download the game every time to reroll, it's really good for their numbers, saying, hey, we reached this amount of downloads and this amount of time. It's good for statistics and engagement.
I hate people using that term.
I'm sorry, but that's just reality. That's how it is.
It's like you get a lot of people to show up, but if they didn't buy anything, then they're not customers, right?
But the numbers go up. The metrics to show in business meetings goes up. So it's really good.
It might not be money from customers, but it's money from investors that don't know any better.
That's right. What do you think, Chow? Now, do you support it?
No. You know what? I'm gonna convince my whale friend that whales every 6-star in Genshin and 6-star weapons all R5. He has every single character all 6 stars, or Constellation 6.
Oh, you're gonna convince them to go
play it,
game?
And I'm gonna ask him, "Can I borrow your account and play it?"
Okay.
I don't actually want to engage with the gacha. I just want you to whale it for me, and then I'll play it.
So I mean, I have his access to his Genshin account. It has like everything maxed out, ranks Constellation 6, rank 5 weapons for everything. It's like
how much has he spent on that game?
He said over $100,000.
What?
Only over 100,000? Okay.
Yeah, an account that's worth over $100,000 are at my tooltips.
I'm gonna move on.
I hope he's rich.
I hope so too.
I'm so good.
I mean, he's either rich or in debt. There's like,
or is that one, or he's another one of those Genshin players that commits credit card fraud to pay for.
He does not. Every time we talk to him, it's like, hey, Sean, have you bought that $300 figure yet? Oh my God.
all right. Okay, we're moving on. Okay. As one game in April leaves early access, another game enters early access. A game that was kickstarted in 2022, a tactical RPG called Zoria: Age of Shattering. It had a successful Kickstarter campaign, and now is entering early access on April 27th for PC. And I know as Adam covers these games, he likes to at least announce when they're entering early access, and then under the understanding that it's going to be frequently updated upon entering that phase. I don't know if they've stated how long they plan for it to be in early access, but typically it can go on for a year or more. So we will see on the other side once they release past version 1.0 for Zoria: Age of Shattering. Going into May is all of a sudden getting kind of crowded. It always, of course, had Zelda as the big heavy hitter there. We talked last week about the release date for, it was either last week or the week before, the release date for Atlas Fallen is also arriving in May. Trinity Triggers in May. 505 Games has announced that Miasma Chronicles, one of the games that James was able to demo, I believe, late last year, will be launching. Neat. Yeah, it was your highlight of that 505 Games showcase. It will be launching on May 23rd.
Yeah, it'll be good, I'm pretty sure, but maybe not a great release timing for it. I don't know.
Everyone wants to knock Zelda down a peg, okay? They're like, no. We have to get the attention somehow.
Well, just squeezing in May, also, Caligula Effect Overdose for PS5 is getting its port in May 30th in North America, June 2nd in Europe.
Even Caligula Effect is like, no, Zelda, I gotta be here too. You know, I respect the fighting the good fight. You know, take down Zelda, Peg.
Didn't Colin reveal one of the Caligula Effect games?
I think I reviewed the original release of Caligula, and I thought it was kind of shit.
I remember nobody liked the original release.
Lucas reviewed the Overdose version, and he didn't care for that version either, even though apparently it's better.
I know a lot of people that
one reviewed the second one. No one was interested. I heard it's actually good.
Well, no. Colin was interested, but Colin, yeah.
He couldn't because he has a conflict of interest with NIS America. So
yeah.
The only thing the only time I've engaged with the Caligula is I think I watched the anime and I was like, whatever.
I didn't even know that had an anime.
That's right. It had a cool opening song, as I remember, and then I tried to play the Overdose and I was like, this is boring, and then I stopped.
Yeah, I know some people that really like those games, especially too, and I believe them that they're good. It's just I don't know.
It would be at the bottom of the list to play for me. In terms of like would I rather play this or Caligula 2? And like right now, 95% of the time it'd be the this, whatever this is. Not to say that Caligula 2 is bad. It's just like I just don't have a lot of motivation to.
Thank God I dodged a bullet. I was almost telling a site that I was going to do a guide because it looked like a Persona back when it first came out.
It's such a guide.
Well, you would have been fine. It's just the site would have been losing out.
I look now. Okay, here. I can only get to those games if there's a child guide for it. I need someone to hold my hand.
The very last headline I have here, I don't know why I marked it last. It's a confusing one, but it's one that Adam accounted for. The headline is Wrestle Story is a hard-hitting, smack-talking RPG adventure set to release for PC at some point. And I read this game, so there's this headline about Wrestle Story. I'm like, wasn't this game already announced? And no. In May of this year, Skybound Games is releasing Wrestle Quest for PC and pretty much all consoles. This is being published by TikTok Games and is Wrestle Story being announced for PC. So we have Wrestle Quest on the way in May and Wrestle Quest on the way past that.
There's TikTok as in like a separate TikTok like thing. That's not TikTok, the social media platform.
No, it's TikTok, the sound.
Yeah, not TikTok.
No, just
That's not the social media.
TikTok games.
Because
Yeah,
I know
not related. No, good shout. Not related to the social media platform. But yeah, so Wrestle Story is announced. It got an announcement trailer. It's only slated for PC. It doesn't have a release date. It's an RPG wrestle hybrid adventure. It's kind of got like a Dreamcasty 3D art style.
Okay,
Not quite cell shaded, but it's kind of that sort of vibe.
It's weird that there are 2 turn-based wrestling RPGs in development.
That's why I got confused. I'm like, wait,
yeah, I was gonna ask you, I was like, isn't there already another? I had the same exact thought.
So Wrestle Quest has like a very more traditional 16-bit styled art, and then Wrestle Story is more like a simplified 3D chibi-ish kind of art. But yeah, two wrestle-based hybrid RPGs. If you're into wrestling and into RPGs, I guess you're eating good over the next year or so. So congrats to all 3 of you. But yeah, I don't know. It looks fun. It looks charming. It looks quirky, which I guess if you're making a wrestling RPG, that's kind of what you're going for, is the quirky. But figured we give that a shout out here. I guess I slotted it at the end. I didn't realize it was a new announcement. I thought it was something related to WrestleQuest, but it's not. It's Wrestle Story. So shame on me. All right, here we are. We're past the 3-hour mark, and we have reached the end of the headlines. So that covers it. We've made it. Who knew?
Did it? You survived.
Yeah, I don't know why this podcast went on for so long.
We had no topic. It went on for this long.
It's fucked up.
Well, it's because we talk about this week.
Well, we kind of went in depth on all the different topics, ranging from Ryza to Resident Evil to Wolong to all the release dates. So, and including all the features up on the site. That was another good chunk of time for all the different things, Wild Arms, all those different topics that those touched. But yeah, we made it to the end. Thank you all so much for listening. If you've made it here, we really do appreciate your support. Please do give us any feedback, thumbs up, likes, comments. We love reading all those, whether they're on Spotify or your podcast platform of choice, or on our YouTube channel, or on the site upload. You can find RPG Site on all the social media platforms. You can just search for RPG Site on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, and you should be able to find us there. You can join our Discord by hitting the link at the top of our homepage at rpgsite.net, or by going to discord.gg/rpgsite. It'll be April next week, so we'll be back next week with another edition of the Tetracast as we go into April and talk about all the releases coming out then. Maybe we'll be looking at War Tales soon, or some of the other April releases. Stranger of Paradise is coming out early in April for Steam, so maybe I'll be poking at that. But we will be back next time with who knows what other sorts of topics we'll go into to go through another 2 or 3 hour podcast, but we're looking forward to it. Until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Later, everyone.